The rifle cracked like thunder, but it wasn't supposed to fire at all. Everyone said it was broken. Everyone said she was out of place. But when Sergeant Nia McKenzie stood on that range at Quantico with a weapon the armory had already condemned, something impossible happened. 10 targets, 300 yards, every single shot dead center. And that was before she closed her eyes. Before the world went silent. Before the internet exploded trying to figure out who she really was. But here's what they didn't know yet. The rifle was never the problem. And Nia McKenzie. She'd been dead for 3 years. Before we go any further, hit that subscribe button right now. You're about to hear a story that'll shake everything you thought you knew about strength, respect, and redemption. And drop a comment, telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Trust me, you'll want to stay until the very end. The morning heat at Quantico came early and stayed mean. By 0600, the sun was already baking the firing range, turning the red clay into something that stuck to your boots and didn't let go. Nia McKenzie felt every degree of it as she walked across the compound, her combat boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. She kept her head down, not out of fear, but out of habit. 3 years working armory logistics taught you that invisibility was a survival skill. She was small-framed, maybe 5'5" on a good day, with deep brown skin that caught the early light and made her look younger than 26. Her hair was pulled back tight into a high ponytail, dark curls fighting against the elastic band. She wore a fitted gray V-neck that showed her collarbones and olive tactical pants that had seen better days. Nothing about her screamed, "Notice me." Everything about her said, "Just passing through." The rifle range stretched out before her like an accusation. 50 Marines were already assembled. Most of them men, all of them looking like they'd been carved from granite and bad attitudes. This was qualification day, the kind of day where reputations got built or buried. Nia wasn't supposed to be here. She was supposed to be in Building 7 cataloging ammunition and pretending she didn't remember what it felt like to actually use these weapons. But then, Corporal Jackson had come running into the armory 20 minutes ago, panicked and sweating. "Ma'am, we've got a problem. One of the M4s just cracked during inspection. Hairline fracture in the receiver. Chief Walsh is losing his mind because we're one rifle short and—" "I'll bring it," Nia had said, cutting him off. Her voice was quiet, almost gentle. "Tell him I'm on my way." Jackson had looked at her like she'd just volunteered to walk into a minefield. "Ma'am, with respect, Chief Walsh isn't exactly—" "I know what he is." She'd already been reaching for the rifle, inspecting the crack with fingers that moved like they had their own memory. "I'll handle it." Now walking onto that range with the damaged M4 slung over her shoulder, Nia could feel every eye turned toward her. The conversations didn't stop exactly, they just got quieter. The kind of quiet that meant people were talking about you instead of to you. "Who's that?" someone muttered. "Armory Tech. McKenzie, I think." "What's she doing out here?" Nia kept walking. She'd learned a long time ago that questions like that weren't really questions at all. They were challenges wrapped in curiosity, the kind of thing that could turn sharp if you gave the wrong answer. Chief Brad Walsh spotted her before she made it halfway across the range. He was exactly what you'd expect from a 15-year SEAL veteran, 6'2", shoulders like a barn door, and a face that looked like it had been punched by every ocean in the world. His arms were crossed over his chest, and even from 30 feet away, Nia could see the smirk spreading across his face. "Well, well," Walsh called out, his voice carrying across the range like a loudspeaker. "Looks like the armory sent us a delivery girl." A few of the Marines chuckled, not loud but enough to let Nia know exactly where she stood in this particular food chain. She stopped about 10 feet from Walsh and carefully unslung the rifle. "Corporal Jackson said you needed this for Qual Day." Walsh took the M4 from her hands, turning it over with exaggerated care. His fingers found the crack almost immediately. "You've got to be kidding me." He held the rifle up so everyone could see. "This thing's got a fracture the size of the Grand Canyon. What am I supposed to do with this?" "I can take it back and grab another one," Nia said evenly. "It'll take maybe 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Walsh's smirk got wider. Sweetheart, we've got a schedule to keep. You think the course runs on maybe 15 minutes? The word sweetheart landed like a slap. Nia felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her voice level. Then I can requisition a replacement from Fort Belvoir. It'll be here by 1400. 1400! Walsh laughed, a sharp barking sound that made several Marines grin. That's precious. Really. But here's the thing, sweetheart. This is qualification day. You know what that means? It means every swinging dick on this range needs to prove they can shoot. And now, thanks to your broken toy here, we're one rifle short. The rifle isn't broken, Nia said quietly. It's cracked. Oh, I'm sorry. Walsh's voice dripped with sarcasm. It's cracked. My mistake. I guess that means it's perfectly safe to fire, right? Tell you what, why don't you shoot it since you're so confident? The range went dead silent. Nia looked at Walsh for a long moment. His eyes were bright with challenge, the kind of look that said he'd already won and was just enjoying the victory lap. Behind him, 50 Marines watched with varying degrees of interest and amusement. This was entertainment for them, a break in the monotony of qualification day. I don't think that's necessary, Nia said. I think it is. Walsh stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough that only she could hear. See, I've been doing this for 15 years. I've trained with the best shooters in the world. And you know what I've learned? Armory techs don't belong on the firing line. They belong in the back cleaning guns and counting bullets. So either take your broken rifle and go back where you belong, or prove me wrong. Here's what Nia wanted to say. I've made shots you couldn't dream of. I've trained instructors who went on to train SEALs. I've fired more rounds in combat than you've fired in your entire career. And that crack in the receiver, it's cosmetic. The weapon's structural integrity is fine. Here's what she actually said. All right. Walsh blinked. What? I'll shoot it. Nia took the rifle back from his hands, her fingers moving over the weapon with practiced ease. 10 rounds, standard qual distance. If I can't hit the targets, I'll personally apologize to everyone here and requisition you a new rifle by noon. The smirk on Walsh's face went supernova. Oh, this I've got to see. You hear that Marine's little lady here thinks she can qual with a broken rifle. He turned to the assembled group, playing to the crowd. Someone get this on camera. I want evidence when she blames the equipment. At least a dozen phones came out. Nia saw the red recording lights blink on, felt the weight of those digital eyes settling on her shoulders like sandbags. This was the moment, the one where she either walked away and spent the rest of her career as a punchline or stepped up and dealt with the consequences. But then a different voice cut through the noise. Chief Walsh. Everyone turned. Captain Ethan Fletcher was walking toward them from the observation tower, his gait unhurried but purposeful. He was younger than Walsh, maybe 35, with the kind of lean, weathered look that came from spending more time in the field than behind a desk. His eyes were gray-sharp and currently fixed on Nia with an expression she couldn't quite read. Sir, Walsh said, straightening slightly. Fletcher nodded at him, then looked at Nia. You work armory logistics, correct? Yes, sir. And you're volunteering to qualify with a damaged weapon? I am, sir. Fletcher's eyes dropped to the rifle in her hands, then back to her face. For just a second, maybe half a second, something flickered in his expression. Recognition, curiosity. Nia couldn't tell. But when he spoke again, his voice was carefully neutral. What's your name? Sergeant McKenzie, sir. Sergeant McKenzie. Fletcher repeated it slowly, like he was tasting the words. All right, Sergeant. Here's what we're going to do. You want to shoot that rifle, fine, but let's make it interesting. He turned to Walsh. Chief set up 10 targets at 300 yards, standard qualification course. Walsh's smirk faltered. Sir, 300 yards with a cracked M4 is exactly what I said. Fletcher's tone didn't change, but somehow it got harder. Set them up, now. 300 yards. Nia felt something loosen in her chest, not quite relief, but close. 300 yards was nothing. It was a warm-up distance. The kind of shot you took before breakfast just to make sure your scope was still zeroed. But then Fletcher turned back to her and that careful, neutral expression cracked just enough to show a hint of challenge. One condition, Sergeant McKenzie. You hit all 10 targets, and Chief Walsh here issues you a formal apology in front of everyone. You miss even one, and you go back to the armory and stay there. Deal." The range erupted in whispers. This wasn't just about a broken rifle anymore. This was about hierarchy, about respect, about a captain putting his authority behind an armory tech that nobody had ever heard of. Nia met Fletcher's eyes. "Move the targets farther." Fletcher's eyebrows rose. "Excuse me, 300 yards is too close." She said it quietly, but every word carried across that silent range like a gunshot. "If we're making this interesting, move them to 500. Someone laughed, a short, disbelieving bark of sound that died almost immediately. Walsh's face had gone from amused to genuinely angry. "You're out of your damn mind." "Maybe," Nia said. She looked at Fletcher. "But if I'm going to prove something, it should be worth proving. 500 yards, 10 targets, this rifle." She held up the cracked M4. "And I'll do it in under 90 seconds. Now the whispers turned into a wave of sound, dozens of voices all talking at once, debating, arguing, laughing. Nia heard fragments of it. "No way. Has to be bluffing. Who does she think she is?" But she kept her eyes on Fletcher, waiting. The captain studied her for what felt like an hour. Then slowly he nodded. 500 yards, 90 seconds. He glanced at Walsh. "Chief, you heard the lady. Move those targets." Walsh looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Fletcher's expression shut him down. "Yes, sir." He turned and started barking orders at a group of Marines near the target line. "You heard him? 500 yards, move your asses." Fletcher stepped closer to Nia, lowering his voice. "I don't know what you're trying to prove, Sergeant, but you just bet your entire career on this. I hope you know what you're doing." "I do, sir." "Because if you don't—" Fletcher paused, choosing his words carefully. "If you don't, this won't just be embarrassing. It'll be career-ending, for both of us." Nia felt that weight settle onto her shoulders again, heavier this time. But underneath it was something else, something she hadn't felt in 3 years, the electric hum of a challenge that actually mattered. "I understand, sir." Fletcher held her gaze for another moment, then nodded and stepped back. "All right. Range is yours, Sergeant. Don't make me regret this." The targets were set at 500 yards, 10 steel plates, each one about 12 inches across, arranged in a staggered line that would require constant adjustment between shots. The wind was picking up, coming from the southeast at maybe 8 miles per hour. Not strong enough to be a major factor, but enough to matter. Nia walked to the firing line, feeling 50 pairs of eyes tracking her every movement. The rifle felt familiar in her hands, despite the crack running through the receiver. She ran her fingers over it one more time, feeling for any structural weakness, any sign that the weapon might fail under stress. There was nothing. The crack was surface level, the kind of cosmetic damage that made armory inspectors nervous, but didn't actually compromise the rifle's integrity. She dropped to one knee, settling into a shooting position that was so ingrained in her muscle memory that she didn't even have to think about it. Left knee down, right foot planted, rifle stock tucked tight against her shoulder. Her breathing slowed, automatically falling into the rhythm she'd learned years ago. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 2. Exhale for 6. Again. And again. The world narrowed. The voices behind her faded into background noise. The heat, the dust, the phones recording her every move, all of it disappeared until there was nothing left except her, the rifle, and 10 steel targets 500 yards away. She chambered the first round. The sound was crisp, mechanical, perfect. 75 seconds, someone called out. A Marine with a stopwatch, probably. Nia didn't look to confirm. Her finger found the trigger, not pressed against it, just resting there with the lightest possible contact. Second joint, not the tip. That was rookie mistake number 1, using the fingertip. Too much surface area, too much chance of pulling the shot off target. The first target swam into focus through the iron sights. No scope. That was fine. At 500 yards with good visibility and minimal wind, iron sights were more than adequate. She calculated the holdover in her head about 18 inches high to compensate for bullet drop. Windage was negligible at this distance with this ammunition. Inhale. Hold. Squeeze. The rifle kicked against her shoulder, a sharp, familiar pressure that felt like coming home. The crack of the gunshot echoed across the range, and half a second later, the ping of metal hitting metal rang out clear as a bell. Target 1 down. Nia didn't pause to celebrate. She was already transitioning to target 2, adjusting her aim point slightly to the left. The targets were staggered, which meant each shot required a different hold and a different calculation. But her brain was doing the math faster than conscious thought muscle memory, and training combining into something that looked like instinct, but was actually thousands of hours of practice. Squeeze. Ping. Target 2 down. 60 seconds, the voice called out. Targets 3 and 4 were closer together, which meant faster transitions, but also less room for error. Nia's breathing stayed steady, her heart rate barely elevated. This was the part most people didn't understand about shooting. It wasn't about speed or strength, or even accuracy. It was about control. About making your body do exactly what your brain told it to do. No hesitation, no second guessing. Squeeze. Ping. Squeeze. Ping. Targets 3 and 4 down. She was halfway through now, and the crowd behind her had gone completely silent. Even the wind seemed to have died down, like the world itself was holding its breath. Target 5 was the farthest to the right, which meant maximum adjustment from her current position. Nia shifted her shoulders, maybe 2 degrees, reacquired her sight picture, and squeeze. Ping. Target 5 down. 40 seconds. 6, 7, and 8 fell in quick succession. 3 shots in maybe 10 seconds, each one requiring a different hold, a different adjustment. Nia's hands moved like they belonged to someone else, someone who'd been born with a rifle in their arms. Chamber aim squeeze transition. Chamber aim squeeze transition. Over and over, smooth as silk. Ping, ping, ping. 9 targets down, 1 to go. The last target was dead center, 500 yards out, perfectly aligned with her shooting position. It should have been the easiest shot, but Nia's hands had started to tremble, not from nerves, but from the adrenaline that her body had been suppressing for the last minute. Her muscles were screaming at her, demanding that she acknowledge what she was doing, what this meant. 20 seconds. She forced the trembling to stop, forced her breathing back into rhythm, forced everything except the target and the trigger out of her mind. But then, and she would never be able to explain this later, not even to herself, she closed her eyes. Not because she needed to, not because the shot required it, but because somewhere deep in her chest, in the part of her that still remembered Kandahar, and the IED blast, and the 3 years of hiding something, demanded proof. Demanded evidence that she was still who she used to be. Eyes closed. Breath held. Memory guiding her hands. Squeeze. The rifle cracked one last time. The recoil punched into her shoulder, and then ping. The range exploded. 50 Marines erupted into shouts and curses and disbelieving laughter. Phones were shaking in trembling hands. Someone was yelling, "No way!" over and over like a broken record. Walsh stood frozen, his face cycling through emotions so fast that Nia couldn't even identify them all. But she heard the last shot clear as day, heard the metal sing, heard the proof. She opened her eyes and stood up slowly, the rifle still in her hands. Every part of her body was screaming now, adrenaline withdrawal hitting like a freight train. But she kept her face neutral, kept her voice steady when she turned to face Walsh. 10 for 10, she said quietly. 87 seconds. Walsh's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. His hands clenched into fists, then unclenched, then clenched again. For a second, Nia thought he might actually take a swing at her. But then Fletcher stepped between them, and Walsh seemed to deflate. That was... Fletcher started, then stopped. Shook his head. Tried again. Sergeant McKenzie, that was the most impressive shooting I've seen in 15 years of service. Nia didn't respond. Couldn't respond. Because now that the shooting was over, now that the proof was complete, her body was starting to remember all the reasons she'd stopped doing this in the first place. Her hands weren't just trembling anymore, they were shaking. Her breathing was coming too fast, too shallow. The rifle suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Ma'am," Fletcher's voice was closer now, concerned. "Are you all right?" She managed a nod, managed to hand the rifle back to him before her grip failed completely. I need to get back to the armory." "Wait." Fletcher's hand caught her arm, gentle, not restraining. "Before you go, I need to ask you something." Nia forced herself to meet his eyes. "Who trained you?" Fletcher asked. His voice was quiet enough that only she could hear, because that wasn't basic. That wasn't even designated marksman school. That was something else entirely. For 3 years, Nia had practiced her answer to this exact question. 3 years of rehearsing the lie, smoothing out the edges, making it sound believable. "I took some advanced courses at Fort Benning, had a good instructor. Lucky, I guess. But standing there on that range with 50 Marines staring at her like she'd just walked on water, the lie stuck in her throat. Fort Benning," she said finally. It wasn't entirely untrue. She had been at Fort Benning, just not in the way Fletcher was imagining. Fletcher studied her face, and Nia could see him processing, calculating, trying to fit the pieces together. "Fort Benning," he repeated. "That's it." "That's it, sir." He didn't believe her. She could see it in his eyes and the way his jaw tightened just slightly. But after a moment, he nodded and released her arm. "All right, Sergeant. You're dismissed. And for what it's worth, that was extraordinary." Nia turned and started walking back toward the armory. Behind her, she heard Walsh's voice rising in protest, heard Fletcher cutting him off, heard the crowd of Marines erupting into arguments and speculation. But she didn't look back. Couldn't look back. Because if she looked back, she might see what she'd just done. Might understand that in 90 seconds, she'd torn down 3 years of careful invisibility. 3 years of hiding. 3 years of pretending that Sergeant Nia McKenzie, armory technician, was the only version of herself that still existed. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with shaking hands, saw a text from an unknown number. "Someone just posted your range video to Reddit. It's already got 50K views. Thought you should know. 50,000 views in less than 10 minutes. Nia stopped walking. Stood there in the middle of the compound with the sun beating down and the dust swirling around her boots. Somewhere behind her, Marines were still shouting, still trying to figure out what they'd just witnessed. Somewhere ahead of her, the armory waited quiet, dark, safe. And somewhere out in the digital world, 50,000 people were watching her shoot, watching her prove something she'd spent 3 years trying to forget. Her phone buzzed again. Another text this time from Corporal Jackson. "Ma'am, you need to see this. People are saying they recognize you." Nia's hands went numb. Recognize her. She closed her eyes and saw Kandahar. Saw the training compound where she'd spent 2 years turning raw recruits into precision shooters. Saw the faces of the 63 men and women who'd called her Reaper 6 and followed her into situations that should have killed them all. Saw the IED that had killed 12 of them and supposedly killed her too. Saw the choice she'd made 3 years ago to stay dead. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing now. Text after text after text, each one another crack in the wall she'd built between past and present. Is that really her Reaper 6? No way. Someone check the 7th Special Forces Group roster. She's supposed to be dead. Nia opened her eyes and looked down at the phone in her trembling hands, at the notifications piling up faster than she could read them, at the video that was probably spreading across every military forum and social media platform on the internet. She'd spent 3 years building a life where nobody looked at her twice, where nobody asked questions, where nobody expected her to be anything more than a quiet technician who cataloged ammunition and kept her head down. And in 90 seconds, she'd burned it all to the ground. The question was what came next. But before she could answer that, before she could even begin to process what she'd just done, a Jeep pulled up beside her. Fletcher was driving Walsh in the passenger seat. Both of them looked grim. "Get in," Fletcher said. It wasn't a request. Nia climbed into the back seat, her body moving on autopilot. The Jeep lurched forward, heading away from the armory and toward the command building on the far side of the base. Nobody spoke. The only sound was the engine and the crunch of gravel under the tires. They pulled up in front of a nondescript concrete building marked Building 1 Command Operations. Fletcher killed the engine and turned to face her. Sergeant McKenzie, I need you to be straight with me right now. Are you who I think you are? Nia's throat felt like sandpaper. I don't know what you mean, sir. Yes, you do. Fletcher pulled out his own phone, showed her a screenshot from Reddit. The title read, "Holy shit, is this Reaper 6? Below it was a freeze frame from the range video, Nia's face in profile, the rifle against her shoulder. The concentration in her eyes unmistakable. And below that, comments, that's her. Same stance. Same trigger discipline. No way. Reaper 6 died in Kandahar. Check the tattoo on her left arm. If she's got 7th SFG ink, it's her. Nia's left arm, the one hidden under her sleeve, burned like someone had pressed a brand against it. Fletcher's voice got quieter. 3 years ago, the Army lost one of the best sniper instructors in Special Forces history. Sergeant Major Nia McKenzie, call sign Reaper 6. She was killed in an IED blast outside Kandahar, along with 12 members of her training unit. He paused. Except now there's a video of someone who looks exactly like her shooting like no armory technician could ever shoot. So I'm going to ask you one more time, are you who I think you are? The words hung in the air like smoke. Nia felt Walsh's eyes on her from the passenger seat, felt the weight of the truth pressing down on her chest until she couldn't breathe. She could lie, could stick to her story, insist they had the wrong person disappear into paperwork and bureaucracy until this whole thing blew over. Or she could do what she'd just done on that range, stop hiding and deal with the consequences. Yes, sir, she said finally. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. I'm Reaper 6. The silence that followed was so complete that Nia could hear her own heartbeat. Then Walsh exploded. You've got to be kidding me. We've had a goddamn Special Forces legend working in our armory for 3 years and nobody knew. Chief, Fletcher said sharply. No, sir, with respect, this is insane. She's been here the whole time, right under our noses, and she just, decided to hide, to pretend she was nobody. Chief Walsh, that's enough. Walsh shut up, but Nia could feel the rage rolling off him in waves. Not anger at her, she realized. Anger at himself. Because he'd just spent the last hour mocking someone who could have trained him, who had trained people better than him. Fletcher turned back to Nia. Why? His voice was gentle now, almost sad. Why hide after everything you accomplished? 12 people died, Nia said. The words came out flat, emotionless. She'd practiced saying them so many times that they'd lost all meaning. 12 people I trained. 12 people who trusted me. They died because I made a mistake. That's not... They died because I led them into an ambush. Nia's voice cracked, despite her best efforts. Because I missed the signs. Because I thought I was good enough to keep them safe and I was wrong. So when the Army offered me a medical discharge and a chance to disappear, I took it. Because what else was I going to do? Go back to training more people? Send more kids into situations that would get them killed? Fletcher didn't respond immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. Sergeant Major McKenzie. Just McKenzie, she interrupted. I gave up the rank, gave up the unit, gave up everything. I'm just an armory tech now. No, Fletcher said firmly. You're not. You just proved that. And now that the world knows you're alive, you don't get to hide anymore. Nia felt something cold settle in her stomach. Sir, That video has 500,000 views already, Fletcher continued. By tomorrow morning, it'll be on every news station in the country. Dead war hero comes back to life. Reaper 6 returns. Whatever. The point is, you don't have a choice anymore. The cat's out of the bag. Then I'll resign, Nia said desperately. I'll discharge, move somewhere else. And do what spend the rest of your life running. Fletcher shook his head. You're better than that. And more importantly, the Corps needs you. I need you. Nia stared at him. What? Fletcher leaned forward, his gray eyes intense. I've been trying to overhaul our marksmanship program for 2 years. We're losing qual rates, our advanced shooters are underperforming, and nobody can figure out why. But you, he gestured at her, you trained some of the best shooters in the military. You wrote half the doctrine we still use. You could fix this. I can't, Nia whispered. You already did. Fletcher pulled up the video on his phone again, played it back. Look at this. Look at what you did with a broken rifle in 90 seconds. Imagine what you could do with time, with resources, with Marines who actually want to learn instead of a crowd looking for entertainment. Nia watched herself on the screen, the steady hands, the controlled, breathing, the perfect execution. She watched herself close her eyes for that final shot and make it anyway. And for just a second, she saw what Fletcher was seeing. Not a broken woman hiding from her past, but a teacher who'd forgotten what she was capable of. I need time, she said finally. You've got 24 hours, Fletcher replied. After that, Commander Hayes is going to want answers. Hell, probably Congress is going to want answers. But right now I'm offering you something different. Not a command, not a combat role, just a classroom. Just a chance to do what you do best without anyone getting hurt. A classroom. Teaching without deployment. Training without combat. It should have sounded perfect. So why did it feel like a trap? I'll think about it, Nia said. Fletcher nodded slowly. That's all I'm asking. He glanced at Walsh. Chief, you got anything to add? Walsh was quiet for a long moment. Then, I owe you an apology, Sergeant Major. What I said on that range was completely reasonable, Nia finished. You didn't know. I should have known better anyway. Walsh's voice was tight with something that might have been shame. I've been in the teams for 15 years. I should recognize a shooter when I see one. Most people don't, Nia said. That was kind of the point. The Jeep fell silent again. Outside the base was starting to come alive with activity. Word was spreading. People were gathering. Everyone wanted to know what the hell had just happened on the range. Fletcher started the engine. I'll drive you back to the armory. You're officially off duty for the rest of the day. Get some rest, process everything, and tomorrow morning we'll talk. Nia nodded mutely. The Jeep rolled forward, carrying her back toward the quiet darkness of the armory, back toward the life she'd built out of necessity and fear. But as they drove, she couldn't stop hearing the ping of metal on metal, couldn't stop feeling the rifle's recoil against her shoulder, couldn't stop remembering what it felt like to be good at something again. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a voice she'd been suppressing for 3 years whispered, what if Fletcher's right? What if you don't have to run anymore? She didn't have an answer yet, but she had 24 hours to find one. The armory felt different when Nia walked back in. Same concrete walls, same rows of weapons locked behind chain link, same flickering fluorescent lights that had been dying for 6 months, but everything had changed. Or maybe she had. She couldn't tell anymore. Her phone wouldn't stop. Every few seconds, another buzz, another notification, another crack in the wall between who she'd been and who she was pretending to be. She pulled it out, stared at the screen. The video had 2 million views now. 2 million. In 4 hours. The comments were worse than the view count. That's definitely Reaper 6. Look at the trigger discipline. My brother trained under her at Benning. He said she could shoot the wings off a fly at 1,000 yards. If she's alive, why did the army say she was dead? Kandahar cover-up, government conspiracy. She looks different, smaller. Is it really her? Nia threw the phone onto her desk hard enough that the screen cracked. The sound echoed through the empty armory like a gunshot. She stared at the splintered glass, at the fractured notifications still glowing beneath it, and felt something in her chest crack right along with it. 24 hours. That's what Fletcher had given her. 24 hours to decide whether to step back into a life she'd buried 3 years ago or keep running until there was nowhere left to hide. She sat down at her desk, put her head in her hands, and tried to breathe. But every breath brought back memories she'd spent 3 years suffocating. The smell of gun oil mixed with Kandahar dust. The weight of responsibility for 63 lives. The sound of the IED, not the explosion itself, but the silence that came after. That terrible, complete silence where there should have been voices. Ma'am? Nia's head snapped up. Corporal Jackson stood in the doorway looking like he'd just seen a ghost, which in a way he had. Jackson. She forced her voice steady. What are you doing here? I thought I sent everyone home. You did, ma'am, but... He stepped inside, closed the door behind him. Is it true? Are you really Reaper 6? There it was. The question everyone would be asking now. The question she couldn't dodge or deflect or bury under paperwork anymore. Yes. Jackson's eyes went wide. Holy... He caught himself. Sorry, ma'am, it's just... everyone thought you were dead. The whole unit. They had a memorial service and everything. I know. I read about it online. The words tasted bitter. She'd watched her own funeral from a hospital bed in Germany, hopped up on enough painkillers to kill a horse, and thought, good. Let her stay dead. But why? Jackson moved closer, his voice dropping. Why let everyone think you were gone? You were a legend, ma'am. You could have... Could have what? Nia's voice came out sharper than she intended. Could have gone back to training more kids to die. Could have stood up in front of another class and pretended I knew what I was doing when 12 people I trained didn't make it home. Jackson flinched. That wasn't your fault. You don't know that. Yes, I do. He pulled out his own phone, showed her a screenshot of an old article. I looked it up after I saw the video. The IED that hit your convoy, it was a double-tap ambush. Taliban used a secondary explosive to catch the rescue team. Nobody could have predicted it. The after-action report cleared you of all responsibility. Nia looked at the screen at the words she'd read 100 times before. No fault found. Unavoidable casualties. Honorable discharge offered due to injuries sustained. Clean, neat bureaucratic language that turned 12 deaths into paperwork. Reports don't bring people back, she said quietly. No, ma'am, they don't. Jackson put his phone away. But hiding doesn't honor them either. The words hit like a physical blow. Nia felt her breath catch, felt the careful control she'd maintained for 3 years starting to slip. You don't understand. You're right, I don't. Jackson's voice was gentle but firm. I'm just a corporal who catalogs ammunition, but I know what I saw on that range today. I saw someone who can do things the rest of us can only dream about. And I know... He paused, choosing his words carefully. I know that if I had that kind of skill, I'd want to use it, even if I was scared, especially if I was scared. Before Nia could respond, the armory door burst open. 3 Marines she didn't recognize came in, all talking at once, phones out recording. Is she here? That's her. Sergeant Major McKenzie, can we... Out! Jackson's voice cracked like a whip. This is a restricted area. You want to talk to her? Go through Captain Fletcher. The Marines hesitated, then slowly backed toward the door, but Nia could see their phones still recording, could see the hunger in their eyes. She wasn't a person to them anymore. She was content. A story. Proof that legends could be real. The door closed. Jackson locked it. It's going to get worse, he said. By tomorrow, this place will be swarmed. Press probably. Definitely more Marines wanting to see if you're real. I know. Nia stood up, started pacing. 5 steps one way, 5 steps back. The armory suddenly felt like a cage. I need to think. I need... She stopped, looked at Jackson. I need you to be honest with me. If I do this, if I take Fletcher's offer and start teaching again, am I crazy? Jackson didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was careful. Do you want my honest opinion, ma'am? Yes. I think you're scared, and I think you have every right to be. But I also think... He gestured at the cracked phone on her desk. I think that video shows someone who never really stopped being Reaper 6. You can change your name, hide your rank work in an armory. But when you picked up that rifle today, you weren't an armory tech. You were exactly who you've always been. Nia wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong, that she had changed, that 3 years was enough time to become someone new, but the lie wouldn't form, because he was right. The moment her finger touched that trigger, every pretense had evaporated. She'd been home. I'm going to grab some air, she said finally. Lock up when you leave. Ma'am, that's an order, Corporal. She left before he could argue, slipping out the back exit into the fading afternoon light. The base was buzzing with activity. Now groups of Marines clustered around phones, heated discussions happening on every corner, vehicles rolling past, slower than necessary, like they were hoping to catch a glimpse of her. Nia kept her head down and walked fast, heading for the one place on base where nobody would look for an armory tech. The old chapel sat at the edge of the compound, half forgotten and rarely used. Nia slipped inside, grateful for the dim quiet, for the rows of empty pews that held no judgment. She sat down in the back corner and finally let herself fall apart. The tears came hard and fast, 3 years of grief pouring out all at once. She cried for the 12 who died, cried for the woman she used to be, the one who believed skill and training could keep people safe, cried for the life she'd built in hiding the carefully constructed fiction that someone had blown apart in 90 seconds. She didn't hear the door open, didn't notice the footsteps until someone sat down in the pew beside her. "Sorry," a woman's voice said. "Didn't mean to intrude. Want me to leave?" Nia wiped her eyes, looked over. The woman was maybe 30, with sharp features and lieutenant bars on her collar. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her eyes were kind, but direct. The kind of eyes that had seen things and didn't look away. "No, it's fine. I was just..." Nia's voice cracked. "I'm fine." "Uh-huh." The lieutenant handed her a tissue. "You're Sergeant Major McKenzie, Reaper 6. I'm Lieutenant Ivy Carson. And before you ask, yes, I know who you are. No, I'm not here to gawk or record you. I came here because this is where I go when things get heavy, and apparently we had the same idea." Nia took the tissue, dabbed at her eyes. "You saw the video. Everyone's seen the video. It's all anyone's talking about." Carson leaned back against the pew. "For what it's worth, that was the most beautiful shooting I've ever witnessed. And I've been doing this for 8 years. "Thank you," Nia said automatically. Then, because Carson's presence felt somehow safe, "I don't know what to do." "About Captain Fletcher's offer. About everything." Nia twisted the tissue in her hands. 3 years ago, I made a choice to disappear. To let Reaper 6 die with the 12 people who deserve to live. And it worked. I was nobody. I was safe. And then today, She gestured helplessly. "I destroyed all of it. In 90 seconds. Carson was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something?" "Sure." "I almost quit last year. I was training a platoon for deployment, and one of my Marines kid named Rodriguez asked me why I stayed in. Why I kept doing this job when it meant sending people into situations that might kill them. And you know what I told him?" Nia shook her head. "I told him the truth. I said, because if I don't train them right, someone else will train them wrong, and wrong training gets people killed faster than anything." Carson looked at Nia directly. "You know what happened to Rodriguez?" "What?" "He came home. Whole platoon did. Because I trained them right. Because I didn't quit, even though I wanted to." She paused. "I'm not saying your situation is the same. What happened in Kandahar, that's a weight I can't even imagine. But I am saying this running doesn't make the weight lighter. It just means you carry it alone." Nia felt fresh tears starting. "What if I fail again?" "Then you fail. But at least you'll fail trying to do something that matters. And honestly..." Carson smiled slightly. "After what I saw on that range today, I don't think failure is something you need to worry about." Before Nia could respond, both their phones buzzed simultaneously. Carson pulled hers out, and Nia saw her expression change. "What is it?" Carson turned the screen so Nia could see. It was a news alert. "Dead war hero, alive Reaper 6 spotted at Quantico, Pentagon investigating." "It's national now," Carson said quietly. "CNN, Fox, MSNBC, they're all running the story. And they're asking questions. Why you were declared dead, why the army covered it up, whether there were other survivors who were hidden." Nia's stomach dropped. "There weren't. I was the only one who..." "I know, but they don't. And until the Pentagon releases an official statement, people are going to speculate." Carson put her phone away. "Which means you've got maybe 12 hours before this place is swarmed with reporters. Maybe less. I need to call Fletcher. He already knows. He's been trying to reach you for the last hour." Carson stood up. "Come on. Let's get you somewhere secure before the vultures descend." They left the chapel together, Carson leading the way through back paths and maintenance routes that avoided the main compound. But even here, Nia could feel the attention. Marines pointing, whispering, pulling out phones. The base had gone from home to fishbowl in the span of an afternoon. Carson brought her to Building 1, the same command building Fletcher had taken her to earlier, but this time there were MPs stationed outside, official vehicles in the parking lot, the kind of presence that meant brass had arrived. "This is as far as I go," Carson said. "But listen, whatever happens in there, whatever they ask you to do, remember something. You don't owe them anything. Not the Corps, not the Army, not the people watching that video. You only owe yourself the truth, whatever that looks like." Nia nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Carson squeezed her shoulder once, then walked away. The MPs checked Nia's ID, then escorted her inside. The building was different from this morning. Now it hummed with urgent activity. Officers rushing between rooms, phones ringing constantly, the sharp smell of fresh coffee mixing with tension. Fletcher met her in the hallway. He looked exhausted, like he'd aged 5 years in 5 hours. "McKenzie, good. Come with me." He led her to a conference room where 5 people waited. Commander Hayes, Chief Walsh, 2 officers she didn't recognize, and a woman in civilian clothes with a Pentagon badge clipped to her belt. "Sergeant Major McKenzie," Commander Hayes said, standing. He was older than Fletcher, maybe 50, with iron gray hair and the kind of bearing that came from 3 decades of service. "Thank you for coming. Please sit." Nia sat, felt every eye in the room lock onto her. "I'll be direct," Hayes continued. "The situation has escalated beyond anything we anticipated. Your video has 17 million views and climbing. The Pentagon is receiving hundreds of press inquiries. 3 senators have called demanding an investigation into why you were declared KIA when you were clearly alive. And," he paused, "and we have a problem." "Sir." The woman in civilian clothes leaned forward. "I'm Rebecca Walsh, Pentagon Public Affairs. The problem, Sergeant Major, is that your death report was filed with full honors. Your family received benefits. There was a memorial service attended by high-ranking officials. And now you've suddenly reappeared very much alive with skills that suggest you never actually left the service." Nia's mouth went dry. "I received an honorable medical discharge. Everything was legal." "Legal, yes, but optics matter." Walsh, Rebecca Walsh, not Chief Walsh, pulled out a tablet, showed Nia a CNN headline, "Military accused of hiding surviving soldiers." "How many more, like Reaper 6? "We need to control this narrative," Rebecca continued, "which means we need your cooperation. We need you to appear at a press conference, explain what happened, reassure the public that there was no conspiracy or cover-up. Can you do that?" Nia looked at Fletcher. He met her gaze but said nothing. This was her call. "What if I say no?" The room went silent. Commander Hayes cleared his throat. "Sergeant Major, I understand you value your privacy, but this has become bigger than one person's preference. The integrity of the United States military is being questioned. We need to shut down these conspiracy theories before they spiral further." "With respect, sir, that's not my problem." Nia's voice was steady despite the fear racing through her. "I followed every protocol. I took the discharge I was offered. I built a new life. And now you want me to stand in front of cameras and explain myself because other people decided to turn my private moment into a public spectacle. Your moment stopped being private when you shot 10 targets at 500 yards with your eyes closed," Rebecca said sharply. "You knew what would happen. You knew people would record it." "I knew Chief Walsh would record it," Nia shot back. "I didn't know the entire internet would decide I was a conspiracy theory." "Then help us prove them wrong. Why should I?" The words came out harder than Nia intended. "Why should I perform for cameras, answer questions from people who don't know me, justify my existence to strangers, so the Pentagon can save face?" Fletcher finally spoke. "Because if you don't, they'll create their own narrative. They'll say you were hidden for black ops. They'll say the Army faked your death to cover up a massacre. They'll turn you into whatever story sells the most papers, and you'll spend the rest of your life fighting those lies." He was right. Nia hated it, but he was right. "What do you want me to say?" Rebecca pulled up a document on her tablet. "We've prepared a statement. Basic facts. You were injured in Kandahar, accepted a medical discharge, chose to live privately. The shooting today was spontaneous, not planned. You're grateful for your service and proud of the Marines you trained. Clean, simple, true. And what happens after? After you're free to do whatever you want. Return to Armory Logistics, take Fletcher's teaching offer. Discharge entirely your choice. But the press conference happens first. Tomorrow at 0900. National coverage. Nia felt trapped. Cornered. Like every choice she'd made in 3 years had led her to this moment, this room, these people deciding her future. Can I see the statement? Rebecca handed her the tablet. Nia read through it slowly, carefully. It was exactly as described, factual, sanitized, designed to shut down speculation without revealing anything real. It turned her into a neat little package: injured hero, medical discharge, private citizen. Nothing about survivor's guilt. Nothing about the 12 who died. Nothing about why she'd really disappeared. Fine, she said finally. I'll do it. But I write my own statement. Hayes frowned. Sergeant Major. Non-negotiable, sir. Nia met his eyes. You want me on camera? You want me to vouch for the Army's integrity? Then I do it in my own words. Not yours, not hers. She nodded at Rebecca. Mine. The room exchanged glances. Some kind of silent conversation Nia wasn't part of. You have until 0600 tomorrow to submit your statement for review, Hayes said finally. If it's acceptable, you deliver it. If not, we use ours. Understood? Understood, sir. Dismissed. Nia stood, walked to the door. But Fletcher caught her arm as she passed. You're doing the right thing, he said quietly. Am I? Nia pulled free. Because right now it feels like I'm just making everything worse. She left before he could respond, walked out of Building 1 into the early evening air. The base had transformed in the hours she'd been inside. News vans were parked at the main gate, reporters pressed against the fence, cameras pointing everywhere. Some enterprising photographer with a telephoto lens caught her exit. She saw the flash, heard the shouts. Sergeant Major McKenzie, can you comment? Is it true you were involved in classified operations? Why did the Army hide you? Nia put her head down and walked fast, heading for the barracks. But a figure stepped out of the shadows, blocking her path. Chief Walsh, the real one. Sergeant Major, he said. No smirk now, no mockery, just exhaustion and something that might have been respect. Got a minute? Not really. I'll be quick. He fell into step beside her. I owe you an apology. A real one, not the half-assed thing I gave you earlier. What I said on that range, calling you sweetheart, mocking your weapon, that was unprofessional and unacceptable. You deserved better. Nia kept walking. It's fine. It's not fine. And we both know it. Walsh stopped, forced her to stop too. But here's the thing I've been thinking about since this morning. You let me mock you. You could have shut me down with one sentence, I'm Reaper 6, show some respect. But you didn't. You let me hang myself with my own rope. Why? Nia looked at him directly for the first time. Because I wanted to see if I could still do it. If I was still who I used to be. Or if 3 years had turned me into the person I was pretending to be. And I don't know yet. She started walking again. Ask me tomorrow after I figure out what to say to a room full of reporters. Walsh let her go this time. But as Nia reached the barracks, she heard him call out, For what it's worth, Sergeant Major. Whoever you are now, I'd be honored to train under you. The words followed her inside, up 3 flights of stairs, into her small room that suddenly felt like a sanctuary. She closed the door, locked it, and stood in the darkness, trying to remember how to breathe. Her cracked phone buzzed. Another notification. Another million views. Another step further from the life she'd carefully constructed. Nia sat down at her desk, opened her laptop, and stared at the blank document. Statement for press conference. The file name read. But her fingers wouldn't move. What was she supposed to say? What truth could she possibly tell that would satisfy everyone watching? The cursor blinked, accusatory, impatient. She closed her eyes and saw Kandahar again, saw the faces of the 12, heard their voices, their laughter, their questions about tactics and wind compensation and what made a good shooter great, heard herself answering with confidence she no longer possessed. What would you want me to say, she thought, asking the dead. What would make this mean something? No answer came. Just silence, and the blinking cursor, and the weight of tomorrow pressing down like a physical thing. Nia opened her eyes and started typing. Not the sanitized statement Rebecca wanted, not the careful deflection Hayes expected, but the truth. Raw, painful, incomplete. The only thing she had left to give. She typed until her hands cramped, until the words stopped making sense, until the first draft of something honest sat glowing on the screen in front of her. Then she saved it, closed the laptop, and lay down on her bunk to wait for morning. Outside, the base continued buzzing. Reporters shouted questions at empty air. Marines debated theories in mess halls. The internet spun new conspiracy theories every hour. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Nia McKenzie, Reaper 6, Sergeant Major Armory Tech Ghost, tried to figure out which version of herself to resurrect when the cameras turned on. She didn't sleep. The knock came at 05:30. 3 sharp raps that pulled Nia out of something that wasn't quite sleep, but wasn't quite consciousness either. She sat up disoriented, her laptop still glowing on the desk where she'd left it hours ago. The statement, the press conference. Reality came crashing back. "McKenzie, it's Fletcher. We need to talk." She opened the door. Fletcher looked worse than yesterday. Uniform, rumpled eyes, bloodshot. Coffee cup, trembling slightly in his hand. Behind him stood Lieutenant Carson and 2 MPs she didn't recognize. "What's wrong?" Nia asked, though she already knew nothing good started with MPs at 05:30. Fletcher pushed past her into the room, closed the door. "We have a situation. Can't discuss it in the hallway." Nia's stomach dropped. "What kind of situation?" "The kind that changes everything." Fletcher pulled out his phone, showed her a screenshot of an email. Classified header. Pentagon seal. Words that made her blood run cold. "Sergeant Major McKenzie. Immediate recall to active duty. Classification black." "They can't do that," Nia whispered. "I was medically discharged. They can't just..." "They can if you were never actually discharged." Fletcher's voice was tight. "Rebecca Walsh dug deeper into your file last night. Your discharge paperwork was never fully processed. Some bureaucratic glitch apparently. Which means technically, legally, you've been AWOL for 3 years." The room tilted. Nia grabbed the desk to steady herself. "That's impossible. I signed papers. I received separation pay." "The pay was processed, but the discharge order was never finalized. It got stuck in some administrative backlog." Fletcher ran a hand through his hair. "And now the Pentagon is using that technicality to recall you. Effective immediately." "For what?" Fletcher glanced at the MPs, then back at Nia. "Can't tell you here, but you need to come with us. Now. The press conference is canceled." "Canceled." Nia's voice rose. "I spent all night writing that statement. You said if I cooperated, plans changed." Fletcher's tone went hard. "This comes from above Hayes, above everyone at Quantico. And before you ask no, you don't have a choice. You're either coming voluntarily, or these MPs will escort you. Your call." Nia looked at the 2 MPs. Young faces, neutral expressions, hands resting near their sidearms. Not a threat exactly, but close enough. 5 minutes, she said. "Let me change." Fletcher nodded. 5 minutes, then we leave through the back exit. No reporters, no phones, no questions. They left her alone. Nia changed into a fresh uniform with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. 3 years. 3 years of hiding, and it all meant nothing, because someone forgot to file paperwork. The absurdity of it would have been funny if it wasn't destroying her life. She grabbed her laptop, saw the statement still open on the screen. All those hours, all those carefully chosen words about survivors' guilt, and second chances, and the 12 who didn't make it home. Wasted. She closed the laptop and walked out. The MPs flanked her as they moved through back corridors, avoiding windows, taking maintenance stairs that smelled like mold and old concrete. Carson walked ahead, checking corners like they were in hostile territory. Maybe they were. Nia had seen what reporters could do when they smelled blood. They emerged into a parking garage where an unmarked black SUV waited, engine running. Fletcher opened the back door. "Get in." "Where are we going?" "Classified. Get in." Nia climbed inside. Fletcher and Carson followed the MPs, taking the front seats. The SUV rolled out through a service exit, bypassing the main gate entirely. Nia caught a glimpse of the news vans as they passed, at least 30 of them, now satellite dishes pointed at the sky, reporters doing stand-ups for morning broadcasts. "They've been there since midnight," Carson said quietly. "More arriving every hour. This is bigger than anyone anticipated." How much bigger? Fletcher pulled out a tablet, showed her trending topics on Twitter. Hatch Reaper 6 was #1 worldwide. Not just in the US, worldwide. The video had been translated into 14 languages. People in Tokyo and London and Mumbai were watching her shoot that rifle, analyzing her technique, building her into something she'd never been. 34 million views now, Fletcher said. And that's just the original. There are hundreds of copies, remixes, breakdowns. You're the most famous soldier on the planet right now. I don't want to be famous. Too late. Fletcher took the tablet back. Which is why the Pentagon is recalling you. They need to control the narrative, and they can't do that while you're a civilian with legal protections. But as active duty, you follow orders, including orders to stay silent. The pieces clicked into place. This isn't about paperwork. They're using the discharge glitch as an excuse to bring me back under their control. Fletcher said nothing. His silence was answer enough. That's illegal, Nia said. That's politics. Carson's voice was bitter. And politics doesn't care about legal when there's this much attention involved. You embarrassed a lot of people by not being dead. Now they need to manage the fallout. The SUV merged onto the highway heading north. Nia watched the base disappear in the side mirror, watched the news vans shrink into tiny dots, and felt the last remnants of her constructed life evaporate like morning fog. "Where are we actually going?" she asked again. This time, Fletcher answered. "The Pentagon. You've got a meeting with a 3-star general in 4 hours. He wants to discuss your future in the Corps." "What if I don't want a future in the Corps?" "Then you'll be court-martialed for desertion." Fletcher's voice was flat. 3 years AWOL. That's a minimum of 5 years in Leavenworth. Maximum of life. And given how public this has become, they'll throw the book at you just to make an example. Nia felt her throat close. "You're saying I have no choice. I'm saying your choices right now are limited." Fletcher leaned forward. "But listen to me. This General Mitchell, he's not like Hayes or Rebecca Walsh. He actually cares about soldiers. And he specifically requested you. Not for PR, not for optics, because he has a problem only you can solve." "What problem?" Fletcher glanced at the MPs in the front seat, then lowered his voice. "Our advanced marksmanship program is failing. Qualification rates dropped 30% in 2 years. We're losing competitions to international teams we used to dominate. Nobody knows why. But Mitchell thinks you might. Because I was Reaper 6. Because you were the best instructor we ever had. Because Marines you trained went on to set records that still stand. Because whatever you knew, whatever you taught, we lost it when you disappeared." Fletcher's gray eyes were intense. "Mitchell wants you to rebuild the program, not as punishment, as mission." Nia stared at him. "You're asking me to do exactly what I've been running from for 3 years. I'm asking you to do what you're good at. There's a difference. 12 people died, and hundreds lived because of your training." Carson interrupted, her voice sharp. "You think those numbers don't matter? You think the 63 who survived Kandahar forgot what you taught them? I've read the letters, McKenzie. I've seen the tributes they wrote when they thought you were dead. Every single one said the same thing. You gave them the skills to survive. You gave them a chance." The words landed like physical blows. Nia wanted to argue, wanted to explain that survival wasn't good enough when 12 didn't make it. But her voice had disappeared, drowned by 3 years of guilt that suddenly felt less solid than before. The SUV drove in silence for 20 miles. Nia watched the Virginia countryside roll past trees, giving way to suburbs, giving way to the sprawl of the capital. She'd been here before years ago, receiving commendations she didn't want for accomplishments that felt hollow. The Pentagon had been a building full of people who understood warfare as theory, not practice, who gave orders from air-conditioned offices and never smelled the dust or heard the silence after an explosion. But maybe Fletcher was right. Maybe Mitchell was different. Maybe this meeting wouldn't be a lecture about duty and obligation and doing what was best for the Corps. Maybe, but probably not. They arrived at 09:15, pulling into an underground garage that required 3 separate security checks. The MPs escorted them through corridors that all looked identical. White walls, fluorescent lights, doors with classification labels that ranged from secret to something above top secret that Nia didn't have clearance to know about. General Mitchell's office was on the 4th floor corner position windows overlooking the Potomac. His aide, a stone-faced captain who looked like he'd never smiled in his life, met them at the door. "Sergeant Major McKenzie, the general is expecting you. Alone." Fletcher started to protest, but Nia cut him off. "It's fine. You sure?" "No. But what choice do I have?" She walked into the office. The door closed behind her with a sound like a coffin lid. General Bradley Mitchell was younger than she expected, maybe 55, with salt and pepper hair, and the kind of face that had seen too much, but refused to look away. His uniform was perfect ribbons and decorations telling a story of 30 years spent in every hellhole the military could find. But his eyes were what caught Nia's attention. They were tired. Not exhausted, but weary. The look of someone who'd been fighting the same battle for too long. "Sergeant Major McKenzie," he said, standing. "Thank you for coming." "Did I have a choice, sir?" A ghost of a smile crossed Mitchell's face. "No. But I appreciate you not making this difficult." He gestured to a chair. "Sit. Coffee." "No, thank you, sir." "Suit yourself." Mitchell poured himself a cup from a machine that looked older than Nia, then sat across from her, not behind his desk, across from her like they were equals. "I'm going to be direct because we don't have time for games. Your video has created a Category 5 shitstorm. Congress wants hearings. The press wants blood. And every conspiracy theorist in America thinks you're proof the military is hiding something." "I'm not hiding anything, sir." "I know. I read your real file. Not the sanitized version the public gets, but the actual classified record." Mitchell set down his coffee. "Kandahar, the IED, the 12 KIA. The survivor's guilt so severe you chose death over facing your own success. I know all of it." Nia's hands clenched. "Then you know why I can't go back." "I know why you think you can't. But I also know something you don't." Mitchell pulled a folder from his desk, opened it. 3 weeks ago, the Taliban released a video. Propaganda mostly. But at the end, there's a segment where they brag about their operations, and they mention Kandahar. Specifically, they mention the ambush that killed your unit. Nia's blood went cold. "What did they say?" "That they'd been tracking you for weeks. That they knew you were training a new class of snipers. That the IED wasn't random, it was targeted assassination. They wanted to take out Reaper 6 and everyone you'd trained." Mitchell's voice softened. "You didn't make a mistake, Sergeant Major. You were hunted, and the only reason they failed is because you survived." The room spun. Nia gripped the arms of her chair, trying to process what he'd just said. Targeted, not random, not her fault. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve the truth. And because I need you to understand something." Mitchell leaned forward. "Those 12 Marines didn't die because you failed. They died because the enemy considered you dangerous enough to risk everything on taking you out. That's not failure. That's the highest compliment a warrior can receive." "That doesn't bring them back," Nia whispered. "No, it doesn't." Mitchell's voice was gentle but firm. "But it means their deaths had meaning. They died protecting the most effective instructor the Corps has seen in a generation. And now I'm asking you to honor that sacrifice by doing what you do best. Teaching. Rebuilding." Mitchell stood, walked to the window. "Our marksmanship program is in crisis. We're producing shooters who can barely qualify, let alone excel. Every metric is down. Confidence, accuracy, tactical application. It's like we forgot everything that made us great. And I think," he turned back to face her, "I think we forgot because you left. Because the person who embodied our doctrine, who could translate theory into practice, who made average Marines into legends, she disappeared, and we never replaced her. There are other instructors who don't have your instincts, who teach by the book instead of by understanding, who produce adequate shooters instead of exceptional ones. Mitchell came back to his chair, sat down heavily. I need you, Sergeant Major. The Corps needs you, not for PR, not for optics, because we're failing the next generation and you're the only person I trust to fix it. Nia felt tears threatening. What if I fail again? Then you fail with honor. But I don't think you will. Mitchell pulled out a document, slid it across the desk. This is a reinstatement order. Active duty, full rank, restored command of the new adaptive marksmanship program at Quantico. You'll have complete autonomy. Choose your staff, design your curriculum, implement whatever changes you think are necessary. No interference from brass, no political pressure, just you doing what you were born to do. Nia stared at the document. Her name, her rank, her future, written in official Pentagon letterhead. All she had to do was sign. What if I refuse? Then I process you for desertion, and you spend the next 5 years in prison. Mitchell's voice didn't change. I don't want to do that. But if you force my hand, I will. Because this is bigger than one person's trauma. This is about every Marine who'll go into combat without proper training. Every life that could be saved by the skills you could teach. I won't sacrifice them for your guilt. The words were harsh, but honest. And somehow that made them easier to bear than false comfort. Can I ask you something, sir? Go ahead. Why do you care this much? You're a 3-star general. You could order any instructor in the Corps to rebuild this program. Why me specifically? Mitchell was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried weight that had nothing to do with rank. Because 20 years ago, I was a lieutenant in Fallujah, green as grass, scared out of my mind, responsible for 40 Marines who trusted me to keep them alive. And I was failing. Couldn't read the terrain, couldn't predict insurgent tactics, couldn't do anything except watch good people die. He paused. Then they sent us a new instructor, some hotshot from Fort Benning who supposedly could teach tactical thinking. I thought it was bullshit. Just more theory from someone who'd never been in the shit. Nia's breath caught. Sir? But this instructor, she was different. She didn't teach from manuals. She taught from scars, from mistakes, from understanding that war doesn't follow doctrine, it follows human nature. And over 6 weeks, she transformed my entire platoon. We went from reactive to proactive, from victims to hunters. And when we deployed, we didn't lose a single Marine. Mitchell met Nia's eyes. That instructor was a specialist named McKenzie. 20 years old, already legendary in certain circles, and she saved 40 lives, including mine. So when I ask why I care this much, it's because I owe you my life, and I'm not letting you waste yours hiding in an armory. The tears came then hot and fast. Nia tried to stop them, tried to maintain composure, but the dam had finally broken. 20 years. He'd remembered her for 20 years, had built his entire career on lessons she'd taught him when she was barely old enough to vote. I don't remember you, she managed through the tears. I'm sorry I taught hundreds of Marines. I know. And that's exactly my point. Mitchell handed her a tissue. You changed hundreds of lives. Thousands, probably. And most of them never even learned your name, but they're alive because of you. They're whole because of you. And now you have a chance to do it again, to take everything you learned, everything you survived, and turn it into something that matters. Nia wiped her eyes, stared at the document on the desk, stared at her future written in black and white. Teaching without deployment. Training without combat. A classroom instead of a battlefield. It was exactly what Fletcher had offered. But coming from Mitchell, from someone who'd lived the consequences of her training, it felt different. Real. Like maybe, just maybe, she could do this without destroying herself in the process. I need a guarantee, she said finally. Name it. No deployments. I teach, I train, I rebuild your program, but I don't go back to combat. I can't. Her voice cracked. I can't be responsible for sending more people to die. Mitchell nodded slowly. Agreed. You're classified as non-deployable for medical reasons. That stays in your file. You'll train them, but someone else sends them out. And if I screw this up, if my methods don't work, if the metrics don't improve, then we try something else. But you don't go to prison, and you don't hide in an armory pretending to be someone you're not. Mitchell picked up a pen, offered it to her. This is your chance, Sergeant Major. Your chance to prove that Kandahar didn't define you. That those 12 deaths don't outweigh the hundreds of lives you saved. Your chance to be Reaper 6 again, not as a ghost, but as a teacher. What do you say? Nia took the pen. It felt heavy, like signing this document would set events in motion she couldn't control. But maybe that was the point. Maybe she'd been controlling too much, holding too tight, trying to manage grief by pretending it didn't exist. Maybe it was time to let go. She signed her name in quick, decisive strokes. Sergeant Major Nia McKenzie, active duty, instructor, Reaper 6. Mitchell took the document, countersigned it, and smiled for the first time since she'd entered his office. Welcome back, Sergeant Major. Now let's get you properly briefed on what you're walking into. He spent the next hour outlining the scope of the problem. Qualification rates, competition results, after-action reports from deployed units. The data painted a grim picture. Marine marksmanship had declined steadily since 2022, and nobody could identify the root cause. Weapons were the same, ammunition was the same, even most of the doctrine was the same, but the results kept getting worse. It's like we lost something, Mitchell said, pulling up a graph showing the decline. Some intangible quality that separated good shooters from great ones. And every instructor I've asked gives me the same answer: they don't know what changed. Nia studied the graph, her mind already working through possibilities. When did the decline start? Late 2022, early 2023. Right around, Mitchell stopped realization dawning. Right around when you disappeared. It's not me, Nia said quickly. One person can't affect an entire program. Can't they? Mitchell pulled up another document: course completion rates from Fort Benning. These are the instructors you personally trained between 2020 and 2022. 37 of them, and look at this. He highlighted a section. 23 of them left the service between 2022 and 2024. The rest were transferred to non-training positions. Within 2 years of your departure, we lost nearly every instructor who'd learned your methods. The implications hit like a freight train. They were my legacy. They were supposed to carry forward, but they didn't, or couldn't, or weren't allowed to. Mitchell closed the laptop. Whatever you taught them, it didn't translate to the next generation. The knowledge died with your unit. And now we're paying the price. Nia sat back, processing. She'd spent 3 years believing her disappearance didn't matter, that the Corps would continue without her. But the data told a different story. Her absence had created a vacuum that nobody else could fill. What do you need me to do? First, go back to Quantico. Captain Fletcher will be your executive officer. Lieutenant Carson volunteered as your assistant. You'll have access to whatever resources you need. Weapons ranges, personnel. Build your program from scratch if that's what it takes. And the press. We'll handle them. You're active duty now, which means you don't talk to reporters without approval. They'll hate it, but they'll move on eventually. They always do. Mitchell stood, extended his hand. Change doesn't happen overnight, Sergeant Major. But it starts with one person willing to try. Be that person. Nia shook his hand, felt the strength in his grip. 20 years ago, she'd saved his life without knowing it. Now he was returning the favor. I won't let you down, sir. You couldn't if you tried. Mitchell walked her to the door. Oh, and Mackenzie, that video of you shooting with your eyes closed. That's going to be your calling card. Every Marine in the program will have seen it. They'll either worship you or resent you. Maybe both. Use that. Make them understand that greatness isn't about perfect equipment, it's about perfect focus. The door opened. Fletcher and Carson were waiting outside, both looking tense. Well, Fletcher asked. I'm in, Nia said. Let's go rebuild a program. The drive back to Quantico felt different, lighter somehow. Like signing that document had lifted a weight Nia had been carrying for so long she'd forgotten what freedom felt like. Fletcher briefed her on logistics classroom assignments, range access, budget limitations. Carson talked about personnel, about which Marines might be good candidates for the new program. And Nia actually listened, instead of just waiting for the conversation to end. They arrived at Quantico mid-afternoon. The news vans were still at the gate, but the MPs had instructions. Now no comment, no access, move along. Nia saw the reporters shouting questions as the SUV passed, saw the frustration on their faces, and felt nothing. They wanted a story. She had a mission. The two didn't need to intersect. Building 7. The armory looked abandoned when they pulled up. Good. Corporal Jackson had followed orders and kept everyone out. Nia grabbed her laptop and headed inside, Fletcher and Carson following. "This is your office now," Fletcher said, gesturing to a room that had been storage yesterday. "We'll get you proper furniture tomorrow, but for now—" "It's perfect," Nia interrupted. Because it was. Small, quiet, away from the main compound. A place where she could think without 50 people watching her every move. Carson handed her a file. Preliminary roster of Marines who've expressed interest in the new program. 26 names so far. More coming in every hour. Nia opened the file, scanned the names. Most were junior enlisted, a few NCOs, one captain who'd specifically requested to attend despite outranking her. This Captain Reeves. What's his story? Iraq veteran, 2 tours. He's a company commander but wants to improve his personal marksmanship. Says he nearly got killed because he couldn't make a shot when it counted. Carson's voice was carefully neutral. He's good people. Little intense, but good. Nia made a mental note to talk to Reeves first. Anyone willing to admit their weaknesses was worth investing in. "When do we start?" Fletcher asked. "Tomorrow morning. 0600. Tell everyone on that list to report to Range 4 with their service weapons. We're going to do a baseline assessment." Just like that. Just like that. Nia looked at him directly. "I spent 3 years hiding. I spent last night terrified. But right now in this moment I know exactly what I need to do. So yeah, tomorrow morning, we start rebuilding." Fletcher grinned. "Yes, ma'am." They left her alone to prepare. Nia sat at her desk, opened her laptop, and stared at the statement she'd written for the press conference that never happened. All those words about guilt and survival and honoring the dead. She read through it one more time, then deleted the file. That story was over. Time to write a new one. She opened a fresh document and titled it Adaptive Marksmanship Program, Core Philosophy. Then she started typing, letting 3 years of suppressed knowledge pour out. Principles she'd learned in blood and sand. Techniques that couldn't be found in any manual. The intangible qualities that separated good shooters from legends. Everything she'd kept locked inside, everything she'd been too afraid to share. It flowed like water, like muscle memory, like coming home. By midnight, she had 40 pages. By 0300, she had 70. And when the sun rose over Quantico, painting the ranges in gold light, Nia McKenzie, Reaper 6 teacher, survivor, saved the document and smiled for the first time in 3 years. Tomorrow she would face 26 Marines who thought they wanted to learn from a legend, and she would show them what legends were really made of. The Marines were already waiting when Nia arrived at Range 4. 26 of them standing in loose formation, weapons slung across their backs, all wearing expressions that ranged from curious to skeptical to outright hostile. The morning air was cold enough to see breath, but nobody was shivering. They were too busy staring at her. Nia walked past them without a word, her boots crunching on gravel, and stopped at the firing line. She could feel their eyes tracking her every movement, calculating, judging. She was smaller than most of them, quieter, wearing the same uniform, but somehow looking different in it. Less like a warrior, more like someone who'd wandered onto the wrong base. Good. Let them underestimate her. It made what came next so much more effective. "I'm Sergeant Major McKenzie," she said, her voice carrying across the range without needing to shout. "Most of you know me as Reaper 6. Some of you watched a video of me shooting a broken rifle and decided you wanted to learn from me. Some of you are here because your command ordered it. And some of you, she looked directly at a lance corporal in the back who was smirking. Some of you are here because you think this is a joke. The lance corporal's smirk faltered. So let me be clear about what this program is and isn't. This isn't basic marksmanship. This isn't a refresher course. This isn't me standing at a podium telling you things you already know while you fight to stay awake. Nia walked along the line, making eye contact with each Marine. This is about breaking you down to nothing and rebuilding you into something better. This is about making you question everything you think you know about shooting. And this is about learning that the weapon in your hands is worthless if the weapon between your ears isn't functioning. She stopped in front of Captain Reeves, the Iraq veteran who'd requested to attend. He was older than the others, maybe 35, with scars on his hands and something dark living behind his eyes. Captain Reeves, you wrote in your application that you nearly died because you couldn't make a shot. Tell me what happened. Reeves stiffened. Ma'am, I'd prefer not to. I didn't ask what you preferred. I asked what happened. Nia's voice stayed gentle, but the steel underneath was unmistakable. If you want to be here, you start by being honest, with me and with yourself. Reeves's jaw worked for a moment. Then, Fallujah, 2019. My squad was pinned down by a sniper in a minaret 400 yards out. I had the shot. Clean sight picture, good position, no wind. But I hesitated. Second-guessed the range, and in that 2 seconds of hesitation, the sniper shot my corpsman. Kid named Davis, 19 years old, bled out before we could reach him. The range went silent. Even the smirking lance corporal looked uncomfortable now. Thank you for sharing that, Captain. Nia's voice was softer now. And I want you to know something. That hesitation, that doubt, that's not a character flaw. That's your brain trying to protect you from making a mistake. The problem is in combat. Hesitation is the mistake. Your brain doesn't know that. So part of what we do here is retrain your brain to trust your training more than it trusts fear. Reeves nodded slowly, something like relief crossing his face. Nia turned back to the group. Every single one of you has a story like that. Maybe not as dramatic, maybe not in combat. But you've all had moments where you knew you should have performed better and didn't. Where the weapon was fine, the conditions were acceptable, but something in here, she tapped her temple, failed you. That's what we're fixing. Not your shooting, your thinking. With respect, ma'am, a voice called out. Staff Sergeant Martinez, according to the roster Nia had memorized. How do we know your methods actually work? No offense, but that video could have been luck. One good run doesn't prove a system. You're absolutely right, Nia said, and watched Martinez's eyes widen in surprise. One demonstration proves nothing. So here's what we're going to do. Each of you is going to shoot a standard qualification course, right now. I'll record your scores. Then over the next 4 weeks, I'm going to teach you my system. At the end, you'll shoot the same course again. If your scores don't improve by at least 15%, I'll resign, and you can all go back to your units. Deal. The Marines exchanged glances. 15% improvement in 4 weeks. That was aggressive. Most training programs promised 5% if you were lucky. I'll take that bet, Martinez said. Several others nodded agreement. Good. Then let's establish baseline. Carson set up targets at 300 yards. Standard qual configuration. Nia pulled out a tablet. You'll shoot in roster order. 10 rounds prone supported position. I want to see what you've got. Lieutenant Carson, who'd been standing quietly to the side, started directing Marines to set up targets downrange. Nia watched the first shooter, a private first class named Johnson, get into position. His stance was textbook perfect. Feet spread, elbows down, rifle stock tight against his shoulder. Everything by the book. He fired 10 rounds, hit 6 targets. 60%, Nia called out. Johnson, stay on the line. I want to watch you shoot one more string. Johnson looked confused, but complied. Chambered another magazine, settled back into position. This time, Nia walked up behind him close enough to observe every micro-movement. Fire when ready. Johnson took a breath and squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked. Nia saw the target jerk a hit, but barely. High and right of center. "Stop," she said. "Don't fire again. Tell me what you felt just then." "Ma'am, your body." "What did it feel like the instant before you fired?" Johnson frowned. "I don't know, ma'am. Normal." "Wrong answer. Your breathing was irregular. Your right shoulder tensed half a second before the shot. And your trigger pull wasn't smooth, you yanked it. All of which tells me you're not present in the moment. You're thinking about the result instead of the process." "I was trying to hit the target, ma'am." "I know. That's the problem." Nia knelt beside him. "The target doesn't care if you hit it. The rifle doesn't care if you're nervous. The only thing that matters is this exact moment right now. Not the shot you just took, not the one coming next. This one. Can you feel the difference between trying to hit something and knowing you're going to hit it?" Johnson shook his head slowly. "Then that's lesson 1. Confidence isn't hoping you'll succeed. It's eliminating every variable that could cause failure. Breath control, trigger discipline, sight alignment. You master those and the target becomes irrelevant. It's already hit before you pull the trigger." Nia stood. "Now do it again. But this time, don't think about the target at all. Think about your breathing. Count to 4 on the inhale, hold for 2. Exhale for 6. And somewhere in that exhale, the rifle will fire. Don't force it. Let it happen." Johnson looked skeptical but followed instructions. His breathing slowed, evened out. His shoulders relaxed. And when the rifle cracked again, Nia didn't even need to look downrange to know it was center mass. The ping confirmed it. "That's how it's done," Nia said. "Next shooter." They went through the roster one by one. Some shot better than Johnson, some worse. But Nia saw the same pattern repeated over and over. Technically proficient Marines who'd been taught mechanics but never taught mindset. They knew how to shoot. They didn't know why they missed. Captain Reeves shot last. His scores were better than most 8 out of 10, but Nia could see the tension in every shot. The overcorrection, the fear of repeating Fallujah. "Captain, I want you to try something," Nia said after his string was complete. "Close your eyes." "Ma'am, close your eyes. Keep your weapon on target, but close your eyes." Nia waited until he complied. "Now tell me what you see." "Nothing, ma'am. My eyes are closed." "Wrong. Tell me what you see in your mind. Where's the target?" Reeves was quiet for a moment. "Center mass, 400 yards. Wind from the east at 5 knots. "Good. Now take the shot. Eyes still closed." "Ma'am, I can't." "Yes, you can. Your body knows where the target is. Your brain is overthinking. Take the shot." The range held its breath. Reeves's finger tightened on the trigger. The rifle kicked. And half a second later, ping. Reeves's eyes flew open. "I hit it." "Dead center. You want to know why?" Nia moved to stand beside him. "Because when your eyes were closed, you couldn't second-guess yourself. You couldn't see the variables that made you hesitate in Fallujah. You just trusted your training. That's what I'm teaching you. Not better shooting, better trust." Something shifted in Reeves's expression. Not quite relief, not quite understanding, but the beginning of both. "All right, everyone, back to formation," Nia called out. "Now that I've seen what you can do, let me show you what you're working toward." She walked to the firing line, accepted an M4 from Carson. "Target distance. 300 yards, ma'am." "Move them to 600. The Marines stirred. 600 yards was sniper territory, not standard rifle range. Several exchanged doubtful glances. "Ma'am," Martinez said carefully, "an M4 isn't designed for 600-yard shots. The round drops too much." "I know. That's why this is interesting." Nia waited while Carson directed the target team to reset. "The weapon in your hands has limitations. Physics doesn't care about your intentions. But understanding those limitations means you can work around them, or through them, or sometimes..." She smiled slightly. "You can ignore them entirely if you know what you're doing." The targets were set. Nia dropped to one knee, settled the rifle against her shoulder. 600 yards. 20-inch drop, at minimum more with wind. She'd need to hold over the target by at least 4 feet, maybe more. The math came automatically, muscle memory, translating numbers into instinct. But then she did something none of them expected. She stood up. "Ma'am, Carson sounded worried. Standing position at 600 yards. Weapon systems don't fail. People do. Nia's voice carried across the range. You think prone is easier because that's what you were taught. But the truth is, position matters less than control. Watch. She fired 10 rounds, standing no support, compensating for every inch of drop and drift, with nothing but calculation and trust. The Marines watched in stunned silence as target after target rang out. 10 shots, 10 hits. Anyone here think that was luck? Nia asked, lowering the rifle. Nobody spoke. Good, because it wasn't luck. It was 20 years of training condensed into 90 seconds. And by the end of this program, every single one of you will be able to do something similar. Maybe not 600 yards standing that takes years, but you'll understand the principles that make it possible. You'll see the weapon differently. You'll see yourselves differently. She handed the rifle back to Carson. Questions? Martinez raised his hand. How do we start? We start by breaking you. Tomorrow, 0600, you'll report here with your weapons completely disassembled. Every single piece. And you'll reassemble them blindfolded while I time you. The Marine who takes longest runs the obstacle course twice. The Marine who finishes first gets to watch. Nia allowed herself a small smile. Welcome to adaptive marksmanship. Class dismissed. The Marines scattered, buzzing with conversation. Nia heard fragments as they passed. Did you see that? 600 yards. She's insane. But underneath the disbelief, she heard something else. Respect and hunger. They wanted what she had. They just didn't know the price yet. Fletcher walked over, shaking his head. You just set an impossible standard. They're going to kill themselves trying to match it. No, they're going to learn that impossible is just a word we use for things we haven't mastered yet. Nia watched the last of the Marines disappear toward the barracks. That's the point. Make them believe they can do more than they think they can. Then teach them how. And if they can't, they will. Because failure isn't in their ability, it's in their belief. Change the belief. Change the outcome. Nia turned to him. You've read my file, Fletcher. You know what I was before Kandahar. 20 years old, barely qualified myself, and they put me in front of experienced Marines and told me to make them better. You think I had credentials? Experience. I had theory and desperation, but I believed I could do it, and that belief was contagious. That's what made Reaper 6 effective, not superior skill, superior conviction. Fletcher studied her for a long moment. You're different than yesterday. Yesterday I was hiding. Today I'm not. Turns out that makes a difference. She started walking toward Building 7, Fletcher, falling into step beside her. How many more applicants came in overnight? 14, including 2 officers and a gunnery sergeant from 2nd Battalion, who said, and I quote, "If Reaper 6 is teaching, I'm learning, even if I have to go UA to attend." Nia laughed, a genuine sound that surprised them both. Tell him he doesn't need to go UA. I'll clear it with his CO. Anyone who wants to learn badly enough to risk charges has exactly the attitude I need. You're going to have 50 Marines within the week. Good. We'll run multiple sessions. They reached Building 7. Nia's office was still mostly empty, but someone had brought in a decent chair and a whiteboard. Carson's work, probably. What's the maximum we can handle, logistically? Maybe 75 if we stagger range time. Practically. Fletcher shrugged. Depends on how hands-on you want to be. Very. I'm not delegating instruction until I've established core methodology, which means I need assistant instructors who understand what I'm teaching, not just how to repeat it. Nia grabbed a marker, started writing names on the whiteboard. Captain Reeves, Staff Sergeant Martinez, Lieutenant Carson. Those 3 get accelerated training. If they grasp the concepts fast enough, they start teaching the fundamentals while I handle advanced applications. That's ambitious. Everything about this is ambitious, but we don't have time for slow. The metrics are failing now. Marines are deploying with inadequate skills now. We fix it fast or people die. Simple as that. She added more names to the board, building a training hierarchy in real time. I need authorization for additional range time, 4 hours minimum per day, 7 days a week. You'll have it. Mitchell made sure I have override authority for resource allocation. Fletcher pulled out his tablet. What else? Ammunition, a lot of it. Can't train shooters without rounds. Already requisitioned, 10,000 rounds per week more if needed. Weapons. I want access to multiple platforms, M4, M16, M27, even some M110s if we've got them. Marines need to understand that principles transfer across systems. Fletcher made notes. Anything else? Nia hesitated. I need permission to fail. What? If this doesn't work, if my methods don't produce results, I need to know I won't be relieved immediately. Give me 3 months, 90 days to prove the system works or prove it doesn't. But no interference, no second guessing, no brass questioning my techniques halfway through. She met his eyes. I can't teach effectively if I'm constantly looking over my shoulder. Fletcher was quiet for a moment. Then, you have it. Mitchell's orders. 3 months complete autonomy. After that, we evaluate. Fair enough. Nia capped the marker. Then let's make those 3 months count. The next morning brought chaos. The 26 original Marines showed up at 0600 as ordered weapons disassembled, looking nervous. But so did 17 others who'd heard about yesterday's demonstration and decided to join. And 3 more who showed up uninvited, begging to be included. Nia looked at the crowd of 46 Marines all holding bags of weapon parts, all waiting for her to tell them what to do. She should have been overwhelmed. Instead, she felt something click into place. This was right. This was what she was meant to do. All right, listen up, she called out. We've got more people than anticipated, which means we're adapting. Alphabetically by last name, split into 2 groups. First group starts with blindfold reassembly. Second group runs conditioning drills with Captain Fletcher until we're ready for you. Switch at 0730. They scrambled to organize. Nia walked among the first group, watching them struggle with blindfolds, their fingers searching for familiar parts that felt alien without vision. This was lesson 2. You had to know your weapons so intimately that sight became optional. Muscle memory, tactile recognition, the weight and balance of each component. Private Johnson dropped a firing pin twice, cursed under his breath the second time. Pick it up, Nia said calmly, and this time feel it before you move it. Your fingers have more sensitivity than your eyes when you learn to trust them. Johnson fumbled for the pin, found it, held it carefully. His hands were shaking. You're scared of making mistakes, Nia observed. Why? Because mistakes get people killed, ma'am. Sometimes, but you know what gets more people killed? Being so afraid of mistakes that you freeze when it matters. She guided his hand to the correct position. The goal isn't perfection. It's confidence under pressure. Master that and mistakes become corrections, not catastrophes. Johnson nodded, his hand steadying slightly. He slid the firing pin home, then the bolt carrier, then the charging handle. Piece by piece, his weapon came together. Time, Carson called out. 12 minutes, 30 seconds. Better than I expected, Nia said. But we're getting that under 8 minutes by end of week. Next. They cycled through the exercise for 90 minutes. Some Marines finished in 8 minutes, some took 20. But Nia wasn't concerned with speed yet. She was watching how they responded to frustration. Who got angry? Who got focused? Who gave up? And who pushed harder? Captain Reeves finished in 6 minutes flat. His hands moved with the precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times, blindfolded or not. When he stripped away the fabric covering his eyes, his expression was calm, almost meditative. You've done this before, Nia said. Iraq. Our armory got hit by mortars. All the lights went out. Had to reassemble in complete darkness because we needed the weapons functional in case they hit us again. Reeves set his M4 aside. Did it 17 times that night. Different weapons, same principle. That's the mindset I need everyone here to develop. Functionality independent of ideal conditions. Nia raised her voice so the whole group could hear. Combat doesn't wait for perfect circumstances. Your weapon might be damaged. You might be injured. You might be operating in darkness, in rain, in conditions that make everything harder. So we train for worst case, which makes best case feel easy. Ma'am, a corporal named Davis spoke up. What if our weapon actually is broken, like that rifle you shot on the video? Then you assess, adapt, and execute anyway. Watch. Nia grabbed an M4 from the weapons rack, examined it briefly, then deliberately damaged it. She bent the front sight post, loosened the stock, and scratched the hell out of the handguard. The weapon looked like it had been through a war. This rifle is now compromised. Sight's misaligned stock is loose. Cosmetic damage suggests rough handling. Most Marines would call this non-functional and request replacement. But watch what happens when you understand your weapon's actual capabilities versus its perceived limitations. She took the rifle to the line, aimed at a target 300 yards out. Compensated mentally for the bent sight, adjusted her hold to account for the loose stock. Fired 5 rounds, 4 hits, 1 miss. 80% accuracy with a damaged weapon. Why? Because I know what actually matters and what's just comfort. The barrel's intact. The firing mechanism works. The ammunition is good. Everything else is negotiable. She handed the rifle to Davis. Your turn. Same target, same weapon. Show me 80%. Davis looked terrified, but accepted the rifle. Took position. Fired 5 rounds. 2 hits. 40%. You want to know why you failed? The weapon's broken, ma'am. Wrong. You failed because you believed it was broken. Your mind defeated you before the trigger did. Nia took the rifle back. We spend the next week unlearning that belief. You're going to shoot damaged weapons, misaligned sights, loose stocks. Everything you've been taught makes a rifle unusable. And you're going to learn that functionality and perfection aren't the same thing. The morning stretched into afternoon. Nia pushed them through drill after drill, exercise after exercise. Shooting with offhand only. Shooting after sprinting 100 yards. Shooting while someone screamed in their ear. Every possible distraction, every potential disruption. Not to make them immune to pressure that was impossible, but to make them functional despite it. By 1400, half the group looked ready to collapse, but the other half looked energized. Reeves, Martinez, Carson, and surprisingly, Private Johnson. They were thriving on the challenge, getting better with each iteration. That's enough for today, Nia announced. Tomorrow we start actual marksmanship theory. Tonight I want each of you to write down 3 moments in your career where you missed a shot you should have made. Not excuses, just facts. What happened, what you think went wrong. Bring those tomorrow. Class dismissed. The Marines filed out, talking animatedly. Nia heard enthusiasm in their voices despite exhaustion. Good. Exhaustion faded. Enthusiasm built momentum. Fletcher approached, looking impressed. You just put them through 14 hours of the hardest training most of them have ever experienced, and they're excited about coming back tomorrow. That's because they're learning. Actually learning, not just repeating. Nia wiped sweat from her forehead. How many new applications came in during today's session? 8 more, word spreading fast. Cap it at 75 for now. We'll expand if results justify it, but I want to maintain quality over quantity. She checked her watch. I need to grab food and review their baseline scores. You good here? Yeah. Oh, one thing. Fletcher pulled out his phone, showed her a news alert. The press finally got bored. Most of the news vans left this morning. Pentagon released a statement saying you've returned to active duty for training purposes, no further comment. Story's basically dead. Nia felt a wave of relief. Good. That's one less distraction. Though you're trending on TikTok now. Apparently someone remixed your shooting video with music. It's got 40 million views. I don't know what that means, and I don't want to. Fletcher laughed. Fair enough. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be even harder. He left. Nia stood alone on the empty range, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. 46 Marines trained today. Dozens more waiting to join. A program building from nothing into something that might actually work. And for the first time since Kandahar, Nia felt like she was exactly where she belonged. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Sergeant Major, this is Captain Reeves. Just wanted to say thank you. Today was the first time in 4 years I've held a weapon without seeing Davis bleeding out. Whatever you're doing, it's working. See you tomorrow. Nia read the message 3 times, then saved it. Because maybe Fletcher was right. Maybe this was working. Maybe she could take everything she'd learned, everything she'd survived, and turn it into something that saved lives instead of haunting her with the ones she couldn't save. Maybe Reaper 6 wasn't defined by Kandahar. Maybe she got to write a new chapter. She walked back to Building 7 as the last light faded from the sky, her mind already planning tomorrow's lessons. 75 Marines to train, 90 days to prove the system worked, and a legacy to rebuild from the ashes of the one she'd burned. The work had only just begun. 3 weeks into the program, Nia walked into the range and found Chief Walsh waiting for her. The same man who'd mocked her broken rifle was now standing at attention, a formal request form in his hand. "Sergeant Major," he said, "I'm requesting permission to join your program." Nia stopped mid-stride. "You're joking." "No, ma'am, I've been watching your Marines. Watched them qualify yesterday. Every single one improved by at least 20%. Johnson, the kid who could barely hit 60% 3 weeks ago, he shot 92% yesterday. That's not luck. That's teaching." Walsh's voice was steady, but Nia could hear the cost of this admission. "I've been instructing for 12 years, and in 3 weeks you've produced better shooters than I've produced in my entire career. I need to learn how you're doing it." Nia took the request form, scanned it. Everything properly filled out, signatures from his CO, even a personal statement explaining why he wanted to join. "You understand that if you join, you're a student, not a chief, not a SEAL, just another Marine learning from scratch." "Yes, ma'am." "And you understand that I'm going to push you harder than anyone else because you've got more bad habits to unlearn." "I'm counting on it, ma'am." Nia studied his face, looking for resentment or ego, or any sign this was about pride rather than genuine desire to improve. She found none of it, just exhaustion and humility and the kind of hunger that came from watching everyone around you succeed while you stagnated. "Report tomorrow at 05:30. Bring your weapon and your ego in separate bags, you'll only need one of them." She handed back the form. "Welcome to Adaptive Marksmanship, Chief." Walsh actually smiled. "Thank you, ma'am." He left and Fletcher emerged from the office, shaking his head in disbelief. Did that just happen? Apparently. Nia walked to her desk, where 73 more applications sat waiting for review. 73. The cap was 75, and she'd hit it in less than a month. "We're going to need more instructors. Carson, Reeves, and Martinez are good, but they can't handle this volume alone." About that, Fletcher pulled up something on his tablet. "I got a call this morning from Fort Benning. Apparently 3 of your former students heard you were teaching again. They're requesting transfer to Quantico specifically to assist with your program." Nia's breath caught. "Who?" "Gunnery Sergeant Chen, Staff Sergeant Williams, and Sergeant First Class DeLuca. All 3 were in your 2021 advanced course. All 3 are currently instructing at various bases. And all 3 said," Fletcher read from the screen, "We learned from the best. Now we want to help her teach the next generation." The names hit like a physical blow. Chen, Williams, DeLuca. She remembered them. Remembered Chen's impossible patience, Williams's analytical mind, DeLuca's ability to break down complex techniques into simple steps. They'd been good students who became great teachers, and now they wanted to come back. "Approve the transfers," Nia said, her voice rough. "We'll need them, and Fletcher thanked them for me. Tell them—" She stopped, unsure what to say. "Tell them I'm honored." Fletcher made notes. "They'll be here in 2 weeks, which gives us time to prepare because I've got more news. General Mitchell wants a demonstration. 4 weeks from now, he's bringing a delegation of 20 officers from various branches to observe your program. They'll watch training review metrics and assess whether your methods should be adopted corps-wide." Nia felt her stomach drop. 4 weeks. That's not enough time to... It's what we've got. Mitchell's under pressure to show results. Congress is asking questions about training effectiveness, budget allocation, all the usual political garbage. He needs proof that investing in your program is worth it. Fletcher closed his tablet. "Can you be ready? I don't have a choice, do I?" "Not really." Nia looked out at the range where her Marines were gathering for morning drills. 75 students, 4 assistant instructors, 3 more coming. A program built from nothing in less than a month. And now she had to prove it worked well enough to change the entire military's approach to marksmanship. No pressure. Then we'll be ready, she said. But we need to accelerate advanced training. I want your best 20 Marines identified by end of week. They'll get intensive additional instruction so they can demonstrate peak capability during the assessment. Already done. I've been tracking performance metrics daily. Want to see the candidates? He showed her the list. Reeves topped it naturally, followed by Martinez Johnson and 17 others who'd shown exceptional improvement. But what caught Nia's attention was the name at the bottom, Private First Class Sarah Chen. No relation to Gunnery Sergeant Chen, just coincidence. But this Chen had gone from 42% accuracy in week 1 to 89% in week 3, the largest improvement in the program. Tell me about this one, Nia said, pointing to Sarah Chen's name. Fletcher pulled up her file. 20 years old infantry, no combat deployment yet. She barely qualified in basic, got marked as needs improvement by 3 different instructors. Her CO almost rejected her application to your program because her fundamentals were so weak. But look at her progression. He showed Nia a graph tracking Sarah's daily scores. The improvement was almost vertical. What changed? Nia asked. You did. According to Lieutenant Carson's notes, Chen was convinced she couldn't shoot. Had internalized every criticism, every failure, every instructor who'd told her she wasn't good enough. Then she came here and you told her the only thing that mattered was whether she believed she could improve. Apparently that was all she needed to hear. Nia made a mental note to talk to Sarah Chen personally. Because if one Marine could transform that dramatically just from changing her belief system, it validated everything Nia had been teaching. Skill was learned. Confidence was chosen. Results followed. The morning session went hard. Nia had them shooting at moving targets, not the predictable mechanical movement of qualification courses, but genuine unpredictable motion. Marines on 4-wheelers pulling targets across the range at varying speeds and directions. It was chaos. It was frustrating, and it was exactly the kind of challenge combat would throw at them. Chief Walsh struggled more than anyone. His SEAL training had made him exceptional at controlled, precise shooting, but adapting to genuine chaos. His scores were barely better than the newest students. Chief, hold up, Nia called after his 3rd failed string. Come here. Walsh approached, frustration etched across his face. Ma'am, I can't get a read on the timing. Every time I think I've got the lead calculated, the target changes direction. That's because you're trying to calculate. You're treating this like a math problem instead of a conversation. Nia took his rifle, handed it to Carson, then grabbed a basketball from the equipment shed. Catch. She threw the ball. Walsh caught it easily. Again. She threw it harder from a different angle. He caught it again. Now tell me, did you calculate trajectory, velocity, and intercept point before catching those? No, ma'am. Walsh paused. I just reacted. Exactly. Your brain processed all that information subconsciously and moved your hands to the right place at the right time. That's what you need to do with moving targets. Stop calculating and start reacting. Your training has given you the fundamentals. Now trust them. Walsh nodded slowly, understanding dawning. It's like you said on day 1, the weapon between your ears. Now you're getting it. Go again. But this time, don't think, just shoot. Walsh returned to the line, took position. The 4-wheeler roared past target, swaying wildly. And Walsh fired without hesitation, one smooth motion, no calculation, pure instinct. The target rang out, dead center. That's what I'm talking about, Nia said. Do that 4 more times. He did. 5 shots, 5 hits. By the end, Walsh was grinning like he'd just discovered fire. Sergeant Major, I've been doing this wrong for 15 years. You've been doing it one way for 15 years. Now you know 2 ways. That makes you more versatile, not wrong. Nia raised her voice. Everyone see what just happened. Chief Walsh has more trigger time than probably anyone here. But he was still locked into one methodology. Once he opened his mind to a different approach, his performance doubled. That's the power of adaptive thinking. You're not replacing your training, you're expanding it. The message landed. Nia could see it in their faces that moment when understanding clicked and possibility opened up. This was why she taught. Not for the shooting itself, but for that instant when a Marine realized they were capable of more than they'd believed. By lunch, they'd burned through 1,000 rounds. By evening, 2,000. Nia's voice was hoarse from shouting corrections and encouragement over the sound of gunfire, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. 4 weeks until the assessment. Every hour mattered. She was reviewing performance data in her office when Captain Reeves knocked on the doorframe. "Ma'am, got a minute?" "Always. What's up?" Reeves stepped inside, closed the door. His expression was serious. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear me out before responding." Nia felt tension creep up her spine. "All right. That shot in Fallujah, the one I missed that got Davis killed. I've been carrying that for 4 years, replaying it constantly, wondering what I could have done differently, and it's eaten me alive. I've barely been able to function as an officer because every time someone under my command picks up a weapon, I see Davis bleeding out." Reeves's voice cracked slightly. "But these last 3 weeks working with you, learning your methods, something shifted. Yesterday, I picked up my rifle for the first time since that day and didn't see Davis. I saw possibility. I saw competence. I saw a future where maybe I don't fail the next Marine who counts on me. Captain, let me finish, please." Reeves took a breath. "I'm not saying the guilt is gone. It's not. But you taught me that carrying it doesn't honor Davis. Teaching others so they don't make my mistakes, that honors him. So I'm requesting permission to extend my time here beyond the standard program. I want to become a permanent instructor. I want to help you rebuild this system, because if my story can help one Marine avoid Fallujah, then maybe Davis didn't die for nothing." Nia felt tears threatening but forced them back. "Permission granted, and Captain Davis would be proud of you." "Thank you, ma'am." Reeves started to leave, then turned back. "One more thing. That tattoo on your arm, 7th Special Forces Reaper 6, you should stop hiding it. These Marines need to see that their instructor carries scars too. Makes you human instead of mythical." He left before Nia could respond. She looked down at her left arm at the sleeve covering the ink she'd kept hidden for 3 years. The skull and crosshairs. The unit designation. The reminder of everything she'd lost and everything she'd been. Maybe Reeves was right. Maybe hiding it was another form of running. And she was done running. The next morning, Nia wore a short-sleeved shirt for the first time since returning to active duty. The tattoo was visible immediately, dark ink against brown skin, impossible to miss. She watched the Marines notice it, saw the whispers spread, felt the weight of recognition settle over the formation. "Morning," she called out. "Before we start, I want to address something. Yes, this is a 7th Special Forces Group tattoo. Yes, I got it after leading a unit in Afghanistan. And yes, 12 people from that unit died 3 years ago while I survived. I'm not hiding it anymore because you deserve to know who's teaching you. Not some legend from a viral video, but a real person who's failed and bled and made mistakes that cost lives. I carry those mistakes with me every day. But I refuse to let them define me. And I refuse to let your past mistakes define you either. We start fresh every morning. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am." The response was thunderous, unified. "Outstanding. Now let's see if we can break some personal records today." They did. Every single Marine improved their scores. Sarah Chen hit 94%. Chief Walsh hit 96. Even the newest students Marines who joined just days ago were already shooting better than their baseline. But the real breakthrough came during afternoon drills when Nia had them shooting in pairs. One Marine shooting one Marine, creating distraction, shouting, moving anything to disrupt focus. The exercise was designed to simulate combat stress, the kind of chaos where perfect conditions didn't exist. Private Johnson was shooting, while Corporal Davis yelled in his ear about everything from bad breakups to unpaid bills. The noise was constant, overwhelming, designed to break concentration. But Johnson stayed locked in. His breathing never wavered. His shots never deviated. 10 rounds, 10 hits. "Cease fire," Nia called. "Johnson front and center." Johnson approached, looking nervous. "Did I do something wrong, ma'am?" "The opposite. 3 weeks ago, you couldn't hit 60% in perfect silence. Today, you hit 100% while someone screamed at you. Tell me what changed." Johnson thought for a moment. "I stopped hearing the noise, ma'am. Not because it wasn't there, but because it didn't matter. You taught us that distractions only work if we give them power, so I didn't." "That's exactly right. And that principle giving or withholding power extends beyond shooting. It applies to fear, doubt, trauma, everything that tries to control you. You choose what has power in your life. Nia raised her voice so everyone could hear. Johnson just demonstrated mastery of the most important lesson in this program. Technical skill matters, but mental discipline determines whether you use that skill when it counts. Remember this moment, because this is what we're building toward. The formation erupted in applause, genuine, unforced recognition of a fellow Marine's achievement. And in that moment, Nia saw her program become something more than instruction. It became a community. Marines teaching Marines, supporting each other, pushing each other to be better. This was what she'd lost in Kandahar. This was what she'd been trying to recreate without knowing it. 2 weeks before the assessment, Gunnery Sergeant Chen's staff, Sergeant Williams and Sergeant First Class DeLuca, arrived at Quantico. Nia met them at the main gate, and for a moment, nobody spoke. These were her students, people she'd trained 6 years ago who'd gone on to become exceptional instructors in their own right. And now they were here to help her. "Gunny Chen," Nia said finally. "Good to see you." Chen's face broke into a wide grin. "Sergeant Major, or should I say, Reaper 6. Hell, I knew you weren't dead. The Army doesn't get that lucky." "Watch it, Marine," Nia said, but she was smiling. "Come on, I'll show you the program." She spent the afternoon bringing them up to speed, showing them the curriculum, the training methodology, the metrics, proving it worked. Chen, Williams, and DeLuca absorbed everything with the kind of focused intensity that reminded Nia why she'd certified them as instructors in the first place. "This is brilliant," Williams said, reviewing the data. "You've taken everything we learned years ago and refined it into a teachable system. Most of what you taught us was intuitive. We understood it, but couldn't always explain it. This makes it concrete." "That was the challenge," Nia admitted. "Turning instinct into instruction. I had to break down every technique into components that could be taught, practiced, and mastered. Some of it worked immediately. Some of it failed spectacularly and had to be redesigned." "What failed?" DeLuca asked. "First week I tried teaching breath control using meditation techniques. Figured if Marines could control their breath during stress, they'd shoot better. Turns out meditation doesn't translate well to combat mindset. I had to find a different approach, linking breath control to physical action instead of mental stillness. Once I made that adjustment, performance jumped 20%. "That's the difference between theory and practice," Chen said. "You're not teaching in a vacuum. You're teaching Marines who need real-world applicable skills. That requires constant adaptation. Which is exactly why I need you three. I can design the program, but scaling it requires instructors who understand the principles deeply enough to teach them without my direct supervision." Nia pulled up the assessment schedule. 2 weeks from now, 20 officers will evaluate this program. If they approve, it gets adopted corps-wide. If they don't, it dies here. I need absolute peak performance from our Marines, which means I need you running drills while I focus on the advanced group. "Consider it done," Williams said. "We didn't come here to watch. We came here to work." The next 2 weeks were the hardest of Nia's life. 14-hour days, 7 days a week, pushing 75 Marines and 4 new instructors through intensive preparation. They ran scenario after scenario, rehearsing the demonstration until every Marine could perform flawlessly under pressure. Nia barely slept, surviving on coffee and determination. But the results were undeniable. Her Marines were shooting at levels most instructors said were impossible. The bottom-tier Marines who'd struggled to qualify were now hitting 80% consistently. The top tier was averaging 95% or better. And the advanced group, the 20 Marines who would demonstrate during the assessment, were performing at near Olympic levels. 3 days before the assessment, Nia gathered everyone for a final briefing. "I'm not going to sugarcoat this," she said. "In 72 hours, people who've never trained a day in their lives will judge whether your progress is real or lucky. They'll look for flaws, inconsistencies, any reason to dismiss what we've built here. And if they decide this program doesn't meet their standards, it ends. All of it. You go back to your units. I go back to," she paused, "somewhere else. And the next generation of Marines gets trained the same way we've been training them for 20 years, the way that's been failing. The formation was silent, every eye locked on her. But here's what those officers won't understand. They won't see the hours you've put in. They won't know about Johnson shooting perfect scores while someone screamed at him. They won't know about Chief Walsh unlearning 15 years of habits because he was humble enough to admit he needed improvement. They won't know about Captain Reeves facing his trauma and choosing to teach instead of hide. They'll just see numbers and decide if those numbers justify continuing. "So what do we do, ma'am?" Martinez called out. "We show them something they can't ignore. We demonstrate mastery so complete, so undeniable that they have no choice but to approve this program. And then we take what we've built here and spread it across the entire Corps. We turn 75 exceptional Marines into 7,000. 700,000. We change the standard until excellence becomes expectation." Nia felt her voice rise. "You've already proven you can do this. Now prove it to people who don't believe in you yet. Make them believers. Make them understand that what we've accomplished in 8 weeks isn't magic. It's just good teaching, meeting willing students. Show them that adaptive marksmanship isn't about producing super soldiers. It's about giving every Marine the tools to reach their potential. Can you do that?" "Yes, ma'am." "Then let's make history." Assessment day arrived cold and clear. 20 officers assembled in the observation area, including General Mitchell and 2 other generals Nia didn't recognize. They brought clipboards, tablets, and expressions of professional skepticism. Nia recognized the look she'd seen it 100 times before. They were here to check a box, not to be impressed. Fine, she'd changed their minds. "Gentlemen," she addressed the delegation, "thank you for coming. Today you'll observe 75 Marines demonstrating the results of 8 weeks in the adaptive marksmanship program. We'll start with baseline comparisons showing where these Marines were before training. Then we'll demonstrate current capabilities. Finally, we'll answer any questions you have about methodology, scalability, and resource requirements." "Fair." The generals nodded. One of them, a 2-star with graying temples, spoke up. "Sergeant Major, I've reviewed your preliminary data. The improvement metrics seem almost too good to be true. How do we know these results are replicable and not just selection bias from exceptional students?" "Excellent question, sir, which is why I'm going to have our worst student from week 1 demonstrate first." Nia gestured to the range. "Private First Class Sarah Chen. Week 1, baseline 42% accuracy. Today's objective: demonstrate 95% accuracy at 400 yards with a standard M4. Chen, you're up." Sarah Chen walked to the firing line, looking terrified. But when she settled into position, her hands were steady. Her breathing was controlled. And when she started firing, every shot rang true. 10 rounds, 9 hits, 90%. "Close enough," Nia said. Chen started this program convinced she couldn't shoot. 8 weeks later, she's better than most instructors. That's not selection bias. That's teaching fundamentals so thoroughly that talent becomes irrelevant. Next demonstration, moving targets at 600 yards. The demonstrations continued for 3 hours. Every scenario, Nia had planned every skill her Marines had mastered. They shot damaged weapons, moving targets obscured by smoke. They shot after running obstacle courses, after doing burpees, until they couldn't breathe, after every possible disruption to ideal conditions. And they hit their targets anyway. By the end, even the skeptical 2-star was leaning forward, watching intently. The clipboards had been abandoned. These weren't observers checking boxes anymore. They were military professionals recognizing something genuinely revolutionary. "One final demonstration," Nia announced. "Captain Reeves will engage 10 targets at 800 yards, standing position, no support, standard M4. This represents the absolute peak of what our advanced students achieve." Reeves took the line, and just before he fired, he closed his eyes. The generals gasped. But Reeves stayed calm, trusting everything Nia had taught him, trusting his training, his instincts, his capability. And one by one, the targets fell. 10 shots, 10 hits, eyes closed. Eyes. The observation area erupted in shocked conversation. General Mitchell was grinning like a proud father. The skeptical two-star was shaking his head in disbelief. Not rejection, but amazement. Questions, Nia asked. How soon can you scale this? Mitchell demanded. How many instructors do you need? What's the timeline for training them? I have 4 instructors ready now: Chen Williams, DeLuca, and Lieutenant Carson. Each can train 25 Marines in 8 weeks. That gives us 100 trained per cycle. Train those 100 to become instructors, and we can reach 1,000. Within 2 years, every Marine in the Corps could rotate through this program. Nia pulled up a detailed expansion plan she'd prepared. But it requires resources, dedicated range-time ammunition allocation, and most importantly, institutional support. If the brass decides this is a priority, we can make it happen. If they treat it as optional, it'll fail. The 2-star general stood. Sergeant Major McKenzie, I came here expecting to see moderately improved marksmanship. Instead, I've watched Marines perform at levels I didn't think were possible with standard equipment. Your program isn't just better than what we're currently doing, it's better than anything I've seen in 30 years of service. He looked at Mitchell. I'm recommending immediate approval and full funding. Whatever she needs. Mitchell nodded. Seconded, this gets priority authorization. McKenzie, you have complete autonomy to expand. And, he paused, emotion flickering across his face. You have my personal gratitude. You've done what I asked and more. You've proven that investing in teachers pays dividends no weapon system can match. Nia felt something in her chest loosen relief, vindication, hope. Thank you, sir. We won't disappoint you. You already haven't. The assessment ended. The generals left. And Nia stood alone on the range watching her Marines celebrate, watching the program she'd built from nothing become something permanent, something that would outlast her. Fletcher approached carrying 2 cups of coffee. You did it. We did it, Nia corrected. This was never just me. Maybe, but you're the one who believed it was possible when nobody else did. That counts for something. Fletcher handed her a coffee. So what happens now? You've got approval funding expansion authority. You could spend the next decade teaching Marines and leave a legacy that reshapes the entire Corps. Yeah, Nia sipped the coffee. Or I could train enough instructors to carry on without me and actually take a vacation. Fletcher laughed. You're going to work yourself to death, aren't you? Probably. But at least I'll die doing something that matters. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the range. Somewhere out there, Marines were deploying with skills Nia had taught them. Somewhere, instructors she'd trained were teaching the next generation. And somewhere, the 12 who died in Kandahar were finally at peace because their sacrifice had become purpose instead of tragedy. 3 months ago, Nia McKenzie had been a ghost hiding in an armory, convinced her best days were behind her. Today, she was Reaper 6 again, not as a warrior, but as a teacher. Not leading people into combat, but giving them the skills to survive it. And for the first time since Kandahar, that felt like enough. You know what the best part is, Nia said. What? That broken rifle everyone mocked. It's sitting in my office now. Lieutenant Carson had it mounted on a plaque with an inscription, "The weapon never failed, the belief did." I look at it every morning and remember that nothing is broken beyond repair if you're willing to do the work. She finished her coffee. Turns out that applies to rifles and people equally. Fletcher smiled. That's pretty profound for someone running on 4 hours of sleep. Sleep is overrated. Legacy is forever. Nia started walking back toward Building 7, toward her office, where 75 personnel files waited for review, where expansion plans needed finalization, where the next chapter of adaptive marksmanship was already taking shape. Come on, we've got Marines to train and a Corps to rebuild. History doesn't make itself. They mocked the black girl's broken rifle. They said she was out of place, that she should stick to cataloging bullets instead of shooting them. They recorded her humiliation, expecting entertainment. Instead, they witnessed a resurrection. Sergeant Major Nia McKenzie didn't just hit those targets. She rebuilt an entire program from ruins, transformed 75 Marines from adequate to exceptional, and proved that true strength isn't found in perfect weapons or ideal conditions. It's found in the warrior who refuses to quit, even when the world says she's finished. She was Reaper 6. She was a teacher. She was a survivor who turned her scars into lessons that would save thousands of lives, and she was just getting started.